This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Hey, this episode of Signal and Noise is sponsored by Aquifer. If you've spent any time in ad tech, martech, or data infrastructure, there's a decent chance you've benefited from Aquifer's technology without even knowing it.
Honestly, Brett, that's part of what makes them such an interesting company. Aquifer is one of those organizations that's quietly powering some of the biggest brands, biggest agencies, and biggest media organizations in the industry. And they're not trying to replace your stack. They're helping you get more value out of the infrastructure you've already invested in.
Yeah, and it's critical. Everybody's talking about AI and more increasingly talking about the growing cost and complexity of collecting, processing, and activating all of the data, which might live in a lot of different places within big organizations. And that's fundamentally what AI depends on to make its better decisions.
That's exactly right. So Aquifer helps organizations simplify that entire process so they can move faster, lower their operational complexity, and accelerate their AI-driven innovation without ripping everything apart, starting over, or dealing with unwieldy cloud costs.
Yeah, and they're led by some of the coolest industry veterans. Bill, their CEOs, helped build and scale some of the most important companies in ad tech. Their new CRO, Xander's a friend of the pod, and one of the most respected voices in the industry.
That's right, Brett. We're big fans over here. And if you're trying to get more value from your data, cloud and AI investments, Aquifer is definitely a company worth knowing, and I recommend checking them out.
Yeah, and visit aquifer.com, which is AQFER.com to learn more. This episode of Signal and Noise is brought to you by Telium.
This is a sponsor I'm genuinely super excited about, Brett. I've worked with Telium for years across multiple clients, frankly, multiple places where I've worked, and they've consistently been an outstanding partner with a strong team, great culture, and of course, really great technical expertise.
Yeah, and one of the things we talk a lot about on this show is that AI is only as good as the data behind it.
Exactly. Data quality, identity, consent, and real-time customer signals have become foundational. Most organizations are discovering their data isn't nearly as connected as they thought it was. And let's face it, AI exposes that really quickly.
And that's where Telium comes in.
That's right. Telium helps companies collect, unify, and activate customer data in real time, making it more useful for use cases like personalization, analytics, and of course, AI. And as one of the few scaled independent players in the customer data infrastructure space, they are a company worth paying attention to.
Hey, this is Brett House coming to you live from Signal and Noise headquarters at Hearst House in Cannes Lion 2026 with Rio Longacre, and we are pleased to be joined by Sarah Robertson, the Chief Product Officer of Experian. And I wanted her to say it. I have a long history at Newstar, a long history in sort of the data tech and MarTech space in the data and identity sort of ecosystem, and a lot's changed right over the last sort of 10 years. And we love to talk to chief product officers and product leaders because you guys are the ones that are architecting a lot of these solutions. So I think my first question for you, Sarah, is what do you think what are the biggest changes you're seeing in sort of the data ecosystem, the identity data ecosystem over the last...
Even maybe how people are getting data, right? Because that's changing on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a lot of trends going on. I mean, everything from native data warehouse, right? And so what are you seeing from a product perspective that's changed over the last couple of years?
We're moving definitely into trusted data is massively important now. And it's becoming more and more important with the world of AI, because if you put bad data in AI, it amplifies that poor signal. So that need for trusted data and the need for the trusted identity that goes in with it is really important. And over the last few years, we've seen identity become the foundation for everything. So because channels are continuing to grow, like CTV, retail media is massive now, all the different digital channels, open web, and brands are demanding this consistency. You have to have identity that underpins that consistency. So that's another trend that we're seeing. The clients are demanding data where they're working. So the data needs to come into their infrastructure. So whether that data goes into AWS or Snowflake or Databricks, they want the capability natively now. to really speed up what they're trying to do. So development of native applications and containerized applications is really coming to the fore.
You mentioned, like when we were talking before, I thought this was such an interesting topic, and I'd love to dig into this a little bit about. There's been so much development. Every organization, we need MCP servers. We need to get into AI, and there's a lot of talk about it. But and you made some comment about the usage isn't quite where people expect it is so far, and it kind of reminded me of, remember back in the day, in the .com era, right? And a lot of people realize the .com crash really was like a fiber crash. All of the fiber they lay, right, expecting a surge in demand, never actually came. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen now, but like, where is where is usage of these things? Like, are people actually using agents to go grab data? Is it being transacted that way, or is it still too early?
I think it's too early at the moment. It makes it really difficult as a product person. We know that we need MCPs, and I'm getting demand from my my boss. When are we going to develop an MCP?
Yeah.
But we don't know what signals to put in the MCP to make it useful, because actually brands aren't demanding that right now.
So the level of sophistication of the way that you're thinking about it as a product leader, the way that the tech vendors or even the agency space is thinking about it, is well beyond where the brands are
Where
today.
the actual market is.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of brands are still, actually, if you think about some of the heritage brands that have been around for ages, they're still on mainframes.
Yeah.
Until they're fully into cloud environments. I mean, you've got these newer entrants and obviously retailers, because they're monetizing their own data, that's sort of ahead. But a lot of financial services are still not necessarily.
A payments company I worked with 3 years ago had AS400s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I know.
think about that just for the audience, for translation purposes. I mean, a lot of our audiences are highly technical, but MCP is model context protocol, and it is really what enables agent to agent communication. Yes. So that if you have agents doing various skills, let's say it's, identity resolution, data onboarding, right? Various types of skills that they're specialized to do, those things to be able to communicate with one another, right? And be orchestrated and managed potentially by an agent that oversees a whole bunch of activities that are being conducted by these agents.
And it will come, right? Absolutely. I really think that MCPs and how we do that, and the way that we service data. If you think now, when we send data, we don't necessarily send all the trust and the metadata that goes with that. So that's where it will change. So you'll send the data signal, but you'll also send the metadata around that data signal to show that you've got the right consent, that you've got the right flow, that this is the level of accuracy that you're expecting with that data. All of that will be packaged into the MCP as well.
Yeah, it's almost like a data quality threshold, right? Like we have media quality threshold, supply quality threshold, but a data quality threshold that sort of ranks these various things to ensure. And privacy has been a topic that's been talked about ad nauseum for the last decade, right? Once brands realized, hey, we're actually tracking people around multiple devices, right? And so there's a lot of governance built around that. But do you think that data, it feels to me like the old is new again, right? That data is kind of becoming the operating layer of this entire marketing ecosystem, and some of the kind of middlemen are getting squeezed a little bit, right? Because if you're a publisher and you can share your data into a data warehouse environment, and a brand can go into that, has their data stored, let's say in a Snowflake ecosystem or whatever it might be, you're really enabling like direct connection between supply and demand without these intermediary SaaS platforms, without a lot of data movement. I mean, there's some data movement at the beginning of the process. Do you think that's something that is common now? I mean, like, how do you see that
It's
evolving?
becoming more and more common. Clients want that process where their data is, and they want to be able to collaborate. But that's where identity signals come in, because actually you find that a brand might have some signals, and then the publisher might have different signals. So actually, how do you collaborate fully? How do you maximize that collaboration? How do you get a really good match rate to enable that? You can't do that without having this identity graph that's underpinning that.
Identity is important, and certainly like the way media is transacted today within Bidstream, like DSPs prioritize bids with identity attached to them. But then there's all that other rich signal as well, right? That's captured from publishers, whether it's contextual or additional metadata on that. Like one thing we've heard is like it's very expensive and maybe even impossible for a lot of that to actually enter into bid stream. And then cost is a big driving factor of that. Plus, it maybe just in practicality. What are you seeing there that's, I think, interesting or worth calling out? Because that's a cool area.
Yeah, but the publishers are seeing their traffic massively decrease. So open web publishers, even quality ones, are seeing like the LLMs and how people are interacting with them as actually their traffic and the amount of data that they're collecting is reducing because people aren't clicking through their sites quite as much because they're utilizing the AI. Consumers are utilizing the AI, and then they're going direct where they want.
I think about the number of tabs I used to have open. I used to have like 10, 15, 20 tabs open. I just have like 1 or 2 now, right? Because I just use the AI chat, and then I'll go to things to verify, but it's not, you don't have to, like, it's summarizing it for you. You don't need to continually go back and look at things. It's incredible.
It's massive. And if you think about the next generation, so I've got a 15-year-old son, he's planned the whole holiday using ChatGPT.
Yeah, as opposed to going direct to publisher.
Going to like reading Lonely Planet and understanding. He's pulling that information from ChatGPT, from the hotels that he wants, from where he wants to do, what's the best route around the country, how do you get from place to place in that country, all of that information. And then the next step will obviously be the agentify of that. So yes, ChatGPT, I'm happy, go away and book all of this.
Yeah.
And it's not quite there yet.
Yeah. And we've been talking about consumer-based agents. There's a lot of talk about buy-side agents and supply-side agents, but consumer-based agents, I mean, think OpenClaw for the masses, right? Because if you've ever played around with OpenClaw, it's not easy. You can't just stand this thing up easily. I built a Hermes agent, like super agent. And the first time it collapsed, it took me like 8 hours to not figure out what was going wrong. And then I said, I'm too busy to deal with this, right? But my point is that consumers need some sort of agent on behalf of them, right? In terms of, to simplify our lives, right? From travel booking, agentic commerce, all these sorts of things, you can build a profile into an agent technically, right? But that's another topic. So we can go off on that topic. So we are very bullish about consumer-based agents. And I think that's going to be the next thing that you see where it's going to be a thing.
But that will drive the change in the industry. You know, we talked about the demand for the MCPs.
Yeah.
Once the consumer-based agents really start driving the change in the consumer-based behavior, then the brands will want more of that MCP because they'll want to be able to interact and put quality data and make those decisions. And how are they pricing?
Yeah.
All of those like different things will then come through, and we'll see that demand.
Consumers should have control over the type of personalization and the type of frequency to either content or advertising exposure that they receive, right? And right now it seems to be decided by the brands, the buy side or the supply side, with the consumers not really having a lot of other than opt-in, accept cookies and things like that. Question about, so we were kind of talking about the open web, right, in the challenges in the publisher ecosystem, right? And a lot of the topics that we end up covering with a ton of different people in the industry really focuses on how critical it is for publishers, especially premium publishers, to build sort of a data advantage. It's the playbook that Meta and Google rolled out.
Walled garden.
The walled garden. Publicis and LiveRamp is another example of the agency ecosystem building a data advantage that is potentially defensible. But I mean, how critical, back to the open website of it, do you think sort of authentication is for premium publishers to actually capture and maintain relationships, almost brand relationships from the publisher side with consumers in order to sustain themselves and potentially scale their reach? I mean, do you think that that's the future of the publisher ecosystem?
It's a real balance, isn't it? Because actually the authentication will reduce the traffic levels, because consumers sometimes want quick interactions with those publishers. And I know, like in the UK, there's this whole consent or pay model that's really come off across Europe, and that's been proved that's fine under GDPR. So many of the premium publishers, you either consent for them to use your data or you have to pay for that content now. So this is really coming to the forefront in terms of how people use, but they're not necessarily using authentication. they're using tracking. So they're using pixel level tracking on their sites to track the individual through.
So it's not like they're giving their email or authenticating in some way where they can identify them. It's just
They're just consenting for the use of that data for advertising. But I think in terms of where the open web needs to do, it needs to be a lot more sophisticated. We need to think more about the creative that's going on there. We need to, which has got to be data driven. We've got to think what we're seeing as well is that some of these publishers are offering more and more measurement solutions because they want to offer their services as a premium. So they need to prove that they've got premium value, and they're doing that via measuring the outcome. So they're paying for or subsidizing those measurement studies now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the authentication issue is an interesting one where, I mean, you look at the monetization of authenticated traffic, it's actually around 10x, right? So I always thought it was, and we've talked about this in the pod quite a bit, Brett, like how it's, if publishers, you'll have a drop off on traffic, but if you're monetizing quite literally 10x, it might actually make a lot of sense to do it. The drop off is probably not going to be 90%. But going back to the live ramp thing, I'd love to dig into that a little bit because for those who don't know, it's probably like nobody. Like Publicis offered, you basically was acquiring LiveRamp. The transaction is supposed to finalize by end of year. LiveRamp really, Ramp ID is kind of the identity spine of the open web, and people use it for measurement and targeting and attribution really across the internet. I'm imagining it's impacting your business. I mean, clients are definitely saying it's affecting some of their decisions. Love to hear what you're talking to clients about. What are you hearing from people?
Yeah, I think particularly in retail media, we're seeing some of the retailers now that actively think about utilizing someone else. They want neutrality because actually they're offering it to a multitude of clients themselves in terms of their offering. So they don't want to be tied to an agency brand in that way. So we're definitely seeing that move in terms of neutrality. And so obviously we're at Cannes. We've had lots of conversations about like people actively saying, what are you guys doing? How can we use Experian to help what we were doing at LiveRamp?
Yeah, but were you getting those questions before the acquisition? Because the thing that I've seen is that people think of it as a tax, and they think that they really only had one option.
Tax on the internet.
Yeah, a tax on the internet. You had Neustar as sort of a backup onboarding solution, right? But we didn't quite compete because LiveRamp has that massive publisher ecosystem.
They had
with 25,000 plus publishers, which gives them huge signal. It's a data mode that they created. But the general perception that I saw for the last 10 years is that people didn't want to work with LiveRamp before the Publicis acquisition. Now it's, regardless of neutrality, but you were forced to, and it was a very expensive tax on data in and data out, right? How do you think, do you think that was there before the acquisition? And what do you think it's going to drive from a product leader perspective on the innovation front in terms of what you guys are doing and other, let's say, identity players or data players are doing?
Yeah, so it was there to some degree, but I think this has sped up the move.
Accelerated it.
Now we have to really do something.
Now we really don't want to work.
Yeah, we don't have a choice.
We don't want to work within that ecosystem. We want to work. I don't know whether you guys have seen our banner. Like, we're above LiveRamp, and our marketing team have put next level neutrality on our Experian banner, which is bold.
The new
level neutrality.
The new Switzerland, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's true. Like, actually, that's what they're looking for. So it's sped things up. People are looking, as in terms of products, we're looking to accelerate what we can do in terms of, so we're signing some partners which will allow us to do more onboarding capability, more clean room capability, because to develop that ourselves, it'll take some time. So actually, can we bring in partners to accelerate it?
Are those publisher partners?
Like tech partners.
Tech partners.
To give that almost infinite scale.
Yeah, tech partners that have got significant onboarding capability, so we can use their pipes to push to more and more channels.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, this has been great. We could probably talk for hours. In fact, I'm sure we could, but we know you do have to run to your next meeting. Thank you so much for coming by, spending time with Signal and Noise, talking about Hearst House. This was a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, everybody. This is Rio Longacre here with Krish Raja for Signal and Noise at the Hearst House for Cannes Lion 2026. And this is the kind of middle of the day for day number 3. We've got a special guest here, Krish CTO at Zeta Global. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet both of you guys.
Yeah, for sure. So we were thrilled to have you. We actually interviewed your colleague, and if you get a chance to see it, Nish, he came by at Possible. We had a great discussion that actually did really well. We got a lot of viewership for that one. So really keen to continue that discussion and dig into some new stuff as well, especially from the product side, because I know there's been a lot of product innovation as data recently. So maybe we can start there. What are some of the new things that you've announced recently that you're excited about, et cetera?
The list is long. This is the year of Athena. As everything turned agentic, we had to pull all those pieces together. Athena is our super intelligent agent that's connected to all of our infrastructure in the background. And so as we are verticalizing our business further, Athena is getting smarter about data sets in different ways and helping marketers find answers faster, but more importantly, connecting that to outcomes, because intelligence is more vital than ever. But so many companies are building the equivalent of like a robot consultant, and that leaves a big gap in getting work done.
That's a really interesting take on it that you just said, which is the depth of data and understanding, because in my time and I guess career in the space, we always think about the breadth and the size, the top level size and scale, but it just sounds like you've taken the other side of the T there almost, right?
I think so, yeah. And we get asked a lot about how much data we have. And it's like, I can tell you how many petabytes of data we have, but that doesn't mean there's necessarily better outcomes. How your data works and actually understanding it is still, I actually think it takes a little bit of a human touch still, a human in the loop touch.
Yeah. A lot of edge cases, right?
Yeah.
I know that you probably are sick of talking about it because it's probably all anyone's been asking you about over the last couple of days. But there was that announcement with an AI company, maybe some people have heard of, called Palantir, that I thought was super cool. So I'd love if you could maybe tell the viewers a little bit about that announcement and what it means.
We're incredibly excited to be working with Palantir. Obviously, they are a giant in this game of AI infrastructure, empowering some of the world's biggest brands. The opportunity with Palantir is we get to bring some of our knowledge around marketing and specifically our data cloud, which has both identity and signal, helps brands understand their consumers better from oftentimes outside the four walls of the brand. And now that's available to anybody who's on Foundry already. So it's already hooked in. If your data's there, you can get more value out of it and create more action.
Just interested to dive into that a little bit. I guess this might come back round to what the previous question I asked, which is, what does that mean to you in practical terms for a buyer of yours? The difference between either breadth versus like much richer data, or say, for example, something that a Palantir or a Foundry gives you that a customer of yours might go, okay, that's actually very different in real world.
Yeah. So data's abundant. It's everywhere. It's coming out of our watches and our refrigerators and our cars. Actionable data is not, and intelligence is still very scarce. The way I think about it, maybe not everybody does, is that marketers are keen to have more data. They always want it. And they're keen to understand identifiers, so like a cookie or an email address, but they're missing identity and pulling all of that data to the soul of somebody and really understanding them at an individual level, as I said, inside a brand and outside of brand. So understanding is great, but then you have to get into context. Context can be broken into a lot of different buckets. Agents have context, customers have context, brands have contexts, and even the marketer themselves have a context. When you're able to focus all of that, like a magnifying light in the sun, you get a lot of power on a specific domain. We can use that magnifying glass that's heating up on the data cloud to really understand what opportunities exist across a market for acquire, grow, and retain. You have to bring your own data to get there, though. And that's why Foundry works so well.
So I had a question about the partnership and about Foundry and about, because one thing I think is interesting about Zeta, many people might not know, is you have all of these components that you've either built or acquired over the years, you've been integrating together. You have CDP, you have DSP, you have your own identity spine. You have a lot of like things. And to your point, you have a lot of signal. So is Palantir going to be sending forward deployed engineers in order to like build AI applications, leveraging the signal, leveraging components? How is that partnership going to work practically?
That's absolutely right. So for Palantir, they've already got a big book of business, and therefore deploy engineers are the best in category. So they are able to use those forward deploy engineers and go build bespoke software solutions for their customers in whatever format they want to build it for. Just as importantly, they're able to use Zeta Marketing Platform as part of that solution. And Zeta Marketing Platform has all the elements needed for forward deploy engineers, whether it's MCP layer, APIs, or headless.
So Rio and I playing whack-a-mole with the mic there.
Good. Yeah.
We're both keen to ask questions. But in terms of the vision, I guess, the long term. Now, again, we're always catching up to ourselves when it comes to data. Some of the things we're trying to do now, very similar to some of the big things that we were trying to do 20 years ago, which is great. And the reason I love the industry is for that. But what's talk me through a little bit about when in 2 years' time, how does all this look? Is when you unpack all these buzzwords like agentic and the depth of data that you're pursuing and Foundry and whatnot. But is it to say that there's a more human interaction from your customer with the data set, and they can ask it and ask it and ask it? And is that kind of what
I think so. Yeah. Listen, the obvious answer here is like autonomous marketing that's better aligned with consumers and what they want. So brands can be more empathetic, stop shouting at your customers, and really engage with their needs. I think there's something that's maybe more urgent that's happening right now and over the next 2 years, which is AI is just unveiling all of the problems that exist in technology stacks, right? Like the CDP, the 3-letter acronym that was supposed to fix everything. It's like, well, it's still not doing it. And there's still problems with data for customer understanding and for AI access and usage. So what I'm seeing right now is that brands are really focused on this challenge. Not all the brands know how to fix this yet because they haven't spent a decade understanding technology and what it takes to build a data fabric. Meanwhile, you have a bunch of market dynamics where some of the data warehouses are starting to creep up into the space. There's been a lot of announcements, and I expect to see more of those to create more data infrastructure for brands to use. So over the next couple of years, I think we're going to see engineers inside of organizations bounce between orchestrating, building, buying, and trying to figure out the right solution. My observation right now is that we're still stumbling a little bit. Not many brands have it perfect.
It's interesting you say that, not super surprising. So we actually just had a chief product officer Experian on right before this, and she was explaining how they had built MCP servers and with the expectation that partners will be using these, and that they think they will, but as of now, its usage is actually pretty low. And certainly slower than they thought it would be. What are you seeing in terms of adoption, whether it's by businesses or by, let's say, users in those businesses of the AI solution features you've been rolling out?
So it's too early to make a prediction on this, but what I'm seeing is a lot of people are building AI solutions. Very few are deploying AI solutions. And I'm concerned about it because expectations, when you see a prototype, it gets sky high. The CEO sees some prototype built on MCP, and they're like, "This is amazing! It's going to transform our business." Yet when you try to deploy it and run it in real time and not have issues, it falls flat. So, as I said earlier, I think we're still stumbling through this a little bit as an industry. I was just reading through some files this morning, and it was a status update I had sent to my boss, and it was talking about capabilities, which are something we invented that predated MCPs. They do exactly the same thing as what MCPs do, but it was a year before MCPs came out. So we needed them. And just reading through the notes of how we got there and where it needs to go. And if you draw a line through that as a trajectory for the next couple of years, we still have some things to figure out.
MCP is not it's just like an API, right? For these agents to talk to each other. So it's not like this is I think people load it up to maybe more.
Yeah, it's been given the latest acronym buzzword status for sure, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
I was talking to a business where speaking about what you're talking about in prototyping and how that, when it goes to production, it's maybe not good enough. And they got a bit trigger happy with their sales team, and they let them all vibe code ideas for their customers. And it went up to leadership. Leadership got excited.
Yeah.
And you can imagine what happens next when someone like yourself in that business just gets a wind of it and is like, okay, this we might need to rethink.
We know this is going to happen though. And at our business, we have a vibe coded environment inside of our platform. So it uses all the safety, the the safeguards, the authentication, the data access, the APIs, and you can build apps inside of our platform, which is great. Vibe coding is cool. It's come so far in the last year. Doing it inside of a safe, brand compliant way is cool. So we ran a hackathon, and I think we had something like 80 apps that were built in 24 hours, and they were amazing. And we used it to understand where we have holes. And we're not jumping to market to say this is live right now. I actually think it's going to take months and months and months to get this out live. There's such an expectation around innovative turns right now because we see the big foundation companies that are very well capitalized, but they're focused on kind of just incremental improvement. And we've seen it over the last few years getting better and better, and there's an asymptote on it. Raw innovation using these primitives still needs to be figured out. And the companies that take one pause, I believe, are going to have a better opportunity to resonate with brands because brands are not trustworthy either. When I go to events like Possible, I actually saw quite a bit of patience from buyers because they've been a little bit burned. They kind of see it, they kind of don't. They want to see a real solution to market.
It's interesting the comment you made about 80 different apps. And I remember we interviewed a founder and CEO of a company. They're actually building supersonic jets, and they're using AI for a lot of what they do now. And he said that the CEO said that the moment for him was they had a hackathon, and everyone, I think within his office, they built a couple dozen apps. And he said the office manager built one of the best ones. It was like an automated way to like look at all of the packages they were sending and receiving agentically.
We built the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said this is the best. This was the best, most useful one, and they ended up going with that one right away. So that's what convinced him that this is a couple of years ago. This is going to be a real thing. We have to like embed this in everything we do. But looking at AI, like the impact on SaaS is potentially pretty profound, though, right? Because like as people start agents, maybe interactions become more done by agents than people, and agents aren't really going to care about a dash. Maybe dashboards even start to go away. Like as a company with product out there, and as in your role, like how are you thinking about like how your customers will be interacting with your solutions? How does that change your product strategy, and how does that scare you? Does it get you excited? Like what thoughts on that?
Yes, what a great question. So the modality of AI is changing everything. Like I didn't think people would want to talk to their computer or their phone, yet walk around, you're going to see everybody voice to text. Or when we launched Athena, it's blown away because it engages a different part of your brain that's all about exploration. And then once you've explored and you have adequate conviction, you will go into getting things done. That modality needs something entirely new, and it has not, my opinion is, it has not been invented by the market yet. You can go use artifacts in Claude and you can get some UI understanding of it, but the depth of exploration is still fairly shallow. When I talk to business owners and people that are building these, they have their old dashboards. And then they'll use AI just to get a quick answer. But if they really want to understand something, they'll go back to the dashboard and they'll look at time series data because people still have a feel for their business.
Yeah.
They can look at time series data and say, oh, I remember how that was last November. And that's not the says all be all. That's not the most important insight that goes into making a decision, but it is one of the insights that goes into making a decision. So we have a whole team that's been working on what we think of as a new agentic OS and exploring the interaction between voice, typing things out, what we think of as artifacts, which is kind of UI on demand, and then full scale UI on demand. We think that UI for the first time ever is actually going to accommodate the user's needs because for years we've been buying SaaS and we just have to deal with whatever's out there.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to
become a power user if you learn this complex UI.
And then you have job safety. Yeah. We think that UIs will be built for the moment and actually be they'll go away or they'll stick around. Maybe they'll be used one day a year.
I think a lot of software becomes that, right?
Yeah.
It's ephemeral, becomes just
living, breathing.
Yeah.
I think you're talking to, leaders that understand when they're using that time series data to make a critical decision. It sounds to me like they understand the difference between data and AI, in that way.
Yeah.
Which is kind of important. The
point you're making is such a good one. The human touch, that je ne sais quoi, or they can, that is still vitally important. When I walk into a brand like Gap, those people are the brand. They have that certain something where they understand the consumer that is not encoded by AI yet. And keeping a human in the loop for decision making, I believe is still important. In 3 years, we'll be able to codify it better through context engines. Probably we'll be able to do it better, but I'm not giving up on humanity, even for things like ethical responsibility of AI and the way that the brand's being portrayed. I'm keeping people in the loop. And when we build these UI controls, I'm still of the opinion that we can't automate everything. We've got to bring consumers along with some sort of UI to build trust in the answers along the way.
Okay, so this is a really interesting point. And so bringing this over to identity, for example, a concept where Rio just said, agents browse the web, and but obviously we're saying identity is kind of a sacred signal, and brands are actually realizing that more. If I talk in market, sometimes it can feel to me as if between agencies, publishers, and buyers, it's either one or the other. It's should we create first party data and use that as our transaction mechanism, or should we do MCP? And for a lot of conversations, I sit there and I go, is it really a one or the other?
No, it can't be. I don't think that it is anyways. And this is coming up with identity very specifically right now because of big LiveRamp news in the last couple of weeks. So starting to think about how data flows, and it has to hinge on identity. But we said it earlier, these solutions still need to, the language you use at Zeta is wrap around your stack. The whole industry still needs to wrap around the stack because we're going to end up with so much diversification in how things are built between the engineers sitting inside a brand or an agency that build it a specific way or make a bet on a specific component. That's going to need to have some flexibility to interact with the rest of their ecosystem. So I don't think it's one way or another.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. We could continue easily. And one of the, for at least for Cannes, we were saying this is like pot of blah blah was our tagline, right? No BS. And this definitely was none of that. This is awesome. Thanks for coming by. Enjoy the rest of the show, and I will have to bring you on for full-time pod. And we usually do like long form, 60, 90 minutes. I think.
We could go for
Yeah,
for sure.
Thanks for having me, guys. Congratulations on putting on a great event here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm joined by my co-host here, Krish Raja. This is great this is our first co-hosting that we've done. It's generally Rio and I. Sometimes we fly solo. And Dave Sandstrom, you're the CMO of Klarna.
Correct.
Right? And Klarna is a payments company, but more than just a payments company. Now you've been sort of on the
growing into
the leading
more
edge commerce media and a lot of these topics. And so certainly great to meet you. Thanks for coming on the pod. Thanks for joining us in the air conditioning. I know it's brutally hot outside. We're under a heat dome in France and in England. So tell us a little bit about your sort of journey, because I think there's two kind of topics that I think are really interesting. It's your journey as a CMO. You've been with the company for what?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
You're like a lifer at this point, considering Klarna's not that old, right?
Yeah, it's slightly. I think we were reborn 10 years ago when I was brought on, which is interesting in itself.
Yeah.
We
So
completely.
So your sort of transformation of marketing and how you've really integrated AI into a lot of your work streams for both efficiency, but probably decisioning and creativity, and then also some of the transformation that Klarna has gone through since you joined, because you've seen this kind of trajectory. And commerce media since that time has become a thing, right? Payments companies, people that control either the purchase, the point of sale. It could be a retailer, but on the commerce media side, it could be, it could be DoorDash. It could be a payments company, right? You capture this really incredible, heavily regulated data, right? But that data is more increasingly being used to help look at attribution when it comes to media effectiveness, to be used in sort of the targeting ecosystem. So let's start. That was a lot. I packed a lot in there. Let's start with your sort of transformation, joining the organization, where you were in your career and where you are now, and where Klarna was when you joined.
So I joined 10 years ago. I came from being the CEO of a big ad agency, so DDB in the Nordics. I ran DDB in the Nordics as a CEO. Was brought on to Klarna with a extremely inspiring challenge to take Klarna from being a fantastic but boring, almost back-end blue B2B company. And Sebastian, my CEO, had the vision of let's create a global consumer franchise. Let's become an Amex of the next generation. Let's create a
Amex versus Visa and MasterCard. Right?
Exactly. But let's do that for the next generation. We have a product that is better, product that is more digitalized, product that is more adopted for a new generation of financial services.
Yeah.
And we started that 10 years ago with this massive transformation of the business model, but also of the brand. And that is when I still do the same thing as I did 10 years ago from a storytelling perspective.
And did you guys start in payments, sort of empowering retailers, right, in terms of their ability to...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is what Klarna
and
does.
so you have this long tail of retailers that need simple, inexpensive, like Clover and the rest of those players in the space, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would see us almost like a PayPal. Right.
Yeah.
So we integrate in merchant checkouts. We are integrated into some of the best and biggest checkouts in the world. So we partner with Walmart, eBay, Apple, Airbnb, Uber. So you come to the checkout, you see the Klarna payment method, and you think like, this is a way better way of paying than Visa or Amex or PayPal. I'm going to click the pink button because I like it. I trust it. It's transparent. And that is how people get to know Klarna.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like, as a consumer, when I use it, that does come across, because when you say, think of us as like similar to a PayPal experience, where, that's really important to capture the consumer, someone like me, someone that's just using the internet and wants to buy things in an ecosystem.
Yep.
Most financial institutions have spent so long, I feel like, not really focusing on making things easy for me and easy to digest and easy to message me and you said a really nice word before this, which was humanize.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a big part of your mission?
That is what we're trying to do, right? Because historically, credit cards, financial institutions have had almost a monopoly on this, in this industry, right? So they haven't had to care about the consumer experience.
Yeah, and you called it almost thorny or angular.
Yeah, I
right.
think
In terms of the experience that we have, to your point, with financial services in general.
That is
right?
it, right? And also
maybe some friction between the institutions and the consumer.
A lot like that, but also have in mind, like there's friction, there's bureaucracy, there's this old kind of thinking.
Yeah.
But also most of the newer fintechs from the last 10 years are optimized for tech bros.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very, very...
Define that. Optimized for tech bros.
It is a very male approach. Like if you look at just...
Meaning the consumer experience is optimized for
the consumer experience
for your average guy in San Francisco.
It is a crypto-like approach. Like have in mind that 50% of household finances are managed by women.
The women,
by women, and almost everyone is like black, blue, gold, airport lounges. Like,
it's sort of you're leaving out like a large segment of your
and also how they position themselves is like it is not an approachable brand or experience for a majority of people, and that was a huge opportunity for us, right? So
does this manifest itself in both product as well as positioning? Because you, as the CMO, there's a presence that you put out in the marketplace to change perceptions and how people perceive finance, how people perceive you. But how did it manifest itself in the product, in the delivery of that product to consumers?
I mean, in the delivery of product, like it is very much about simplicity.
Yeah.
Right? Transparency, getting an overview of your finances. I mean, men love graphs and dashboards and all of that, right? There you go. You want to see, like, most women don't. Like, my head of brand is female, and she's like, I'm so sick and tired of these graphs. Why can't you just show me in a simple way, like what's going on? Right?
Yeah.
Right? So,
well, I think the whole ecosystem is moving. Think of marketing, media, tech. Is moving towards, dashboards aren't helping me do anything. They're not, you have conversational interfaces, you get instant access to insights. Nobody wants more dashboards, whether it's male or female, right? Because you might want like one or two of them, but oftentimes you're like, how do I act on this? I'm overwhelmed by the complexity.
I want to build on that. Sorry, if I may, just thinking about Klarna and the product as well, especially in financial services. Like obviously a static dashboard, I think everyone knows by now that in the future that's not going to be the case. They're going to be more living, more breathing, and in a sense, maybe more emotionally aware as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in the finance industry, that could be a really huge opportunity for Klarna. So if you're already on that train and understanding that your customers' brains are different to one another, not everyone loves a graph, then that's a huge opportunity as well, surely.
Yeah, exactly. And that is really what we're trying to do. Like we don't cater to the power users. We also there are crypto bros out there who love crypto. That is their interest. haven't, like, we're not drinking the Kool-Aid telling ourselves that people love payments. They just want to get it done. We're a utility brand. We should help people. We should
Frictionless
lower
Yeah.
anxiety. And I also feel that incumbent banks and financial companies, they have hidden some of their predatory business model behind dashboard, complex language. It's like interacting with a lawyer.
Yeah, it's like, like reading the fine print. You know?
Exactly.
Like nobody reads all the fine print.
No, exactly. And we want it to be like interacting with a friend. I'm not saying we're friends with our customers, but like interacting with a friend, like interacting maybe with your bigger brother who can help you like make sense of things, right?
Yeah.
Because most people, you know, financing, APRs, you know, fees, stuff like that, it's complex. It's complex.
Yeah.
And we want to make it much more transparent and easy to understand.
Yeah, no, and it seems like there's a big need for that, and you guys are certainly doing that. So like on the topic of commerce media. Commerce media is everyone in the industry, in the ad tech and martech industry, talks about retail media, right? And how big retailers control the path to purchase. You know, from the minute you enter into the site or the walled garden to the point that you make a purchase, right? They're capturing all of this information around that entire experience, right? Usually in network, like within the environment. Sometimes they can gather and match data that's from outside of that environment, but it's a really powerful value proposition. Now, commerce media is sort of I sort of think of it as just a broader category, and it contains a lot more stuff than just the retailer's data, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys play in that with this rich data, right? In understanding sort of data governance and privacy regulations.
Yeah. So all of that put aside, because I mean, we're a regulated bank and we're listed. So when it comes to compliance and our data is that like, we're obviously fully on top.
Yeah.
But what we have a unique position because we understand what people buy across a multitude of platforms. And not only like retailer platforms, right? But
multiple categories.
Yeah. So Nike obviously has very powerful data on what people buy on Nike. But right, we know what people buy on Nike and on Foot Locker. And so we see it across. Very, very few brands have that. Amazon obviously has a very rich data set because people buy everything on Amazon. But when it comes to understanding consumer behavior across different categories, you booked a flight over here and you booked an Airbnb and you did a rental, connecting those dots, even if you're not on the same platform and in the same ecosystem, is extremely powerful, right?
And you're connecting these dots in an anonymized or pseudonymized way, right? Where
always
there is
segments,
no ability to
data.
reverse engineer, because that's where the regulatory element comes in. Like, can you figure out who this person is to be this purchase? But I think that's a really good point between CPG and retail.
Yeah,
there's always been a gulf. Right, like it's something that had to be bridged because CPG just weren't as data rich as the retailers, right? And so the retailers rose in power, the Walmarts and the Amazon, while the CPG companies are still fighting for like shelf space.
Exactly. Right? And I think there's a lot of like synthetic attribution going on. Like we believe this has happened because of 8 different other. We don't believe. Like we know we know that this like
synthetic attribution. It's almost like probabilistic attribution, where it's a bit like guesswork of what's really driving that purchase.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think we play a big role here, like a really big role in understanding things. And I've learned at Klarna that like what people buy says a lot about you as a person, right? It is very powerful data if we aggregate what you buy, what you like, what brands you visit. That says a lot about you as a person.
Yeah. And I think this is probably one of the categories where, for me anyway, there's obviously some trend and correlation between what you bought and what you're going to buy. But the two data sets obviously have very different use cases. You know, I've done a lot of purchase histories that might require very different treatment of what I'm going to buy next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a really interesting consideration as well.
It is also, but also I think like what people buy is such a raw data point, right? So if you would survey our customers and ask them like, hey, do you like Shein and Temu? And everyone would say, no, I don't. I would never buy anything there.
Yeah.
When you see what they buy, everyone buys at Shein because they love buying that stuff, right? So it's really a raw data point on things. But prediction is a completely different thing. Like prediction is, it's still very hard. Very, very hard.
Absolutely. There's one area which I want to go to if you guys don't mind, which is I see your founder online talking to customers on X. I saw that. I thought that was weird. And then I saw that more. I was like, that's awesome. Why don't more businesses do that?
But I mean, I think it's not by design. It is how I think actually many founders operate. Like he runs through Trustpilot reviews. He looks at Reddit. He looks at X and he finds issues with the product because like he is wired to try to create the best possible consumer experience.
Yep.
And if he hears something that is wrong with the product, like we have been in instances where he has picked up an issue with our product at a cafe somewhere, and we course correct two product teams to actually start building. Like it is interesting to have that like balance, but I think he is unique, at least in our industry, in the way that he still truly cares about the consumer, truly cares about the products, and listens in. Like he trusts, and he trusts the anecdotal evidence on Twitter and on forums more than he trusts me, which I think is healthy. Like if he hears from 3 consumers that this is off, and I tell him that is not off, he is going to go with the consumers.
It's not even a brand marketing tactic. It's just how he.
No, that is how he operates.
Yeah.
He often tells me like the founders who've lost track of this, they're on the wrong path.
Yeah, and I think it's refreshing that it's sort of founder-led communications, and how do they communicate in a modern, effective way? Like there's a classic PR route in companies, traditional companies, especially in the financial services industry. Like everything is scripted.
Yeah,
you're a marketing professional. You've got key messages and talking points. You have third rails you can't possibly touch, right?
Everything
and when
written by Claude.
And I wonder, as a marketing leader, how do you control for anything that might have might just have some negative repercussions? Because there are some concerns, especially when you're in the banking industry. I've done a lot of work in JP Morgan and Bank of America, and they're oftentimes their executives, not their super executives, but just anybody in the teams, are limited with their ability to really speak to the public. And when they do, it's so controlled that it doesn't really come across as authentic. Everybody reads through it as just surface level.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that? I mean, authentic voice.
It is a rough balance, right? And him and I talk a lot about like, how do we want to come across? What are topics that are interesting and important? But then again, he has his like founder's Tourette's, which is, which I actually do appreciate because he usually cares about. Like sometimes he answers in Swedish to someone who's had an issue in the south of Sweden with our product, and I think he comes across as someone who truly cares. And I do believe in those kind of
goes down.
I believe in those ripple effects, right? If you see that a founder cares about it, the product teams probably care about it as well. And if the product teams care about it, the product actually cares about it. And then it's probably a good product.
Well, that's where I guess we get to with the tech bro problem, right? If you're building for that audience, then you're probably just building what you want to use.
Yeah.
As opposed to what the customer wants.
Exactly.
And you're trying to probably force that product to be used as opposed to this approach, which is just deeply caring about what people actually like and don't like.
Yeah, exactly. But that is also hard. And that comes back to like how you structure an organization, how you recruit. I would love to see way more females in product leadership roles, right? Because to your point,
data tech, ad tech, market
data
is
tech,
very male driven.
Very male. And it is hard to build something for someone else, right? It's like me going out and buying shoes for my wife. I do not understand the categories of shoes.
I've made that mistake.
She will have to either tell me exactly which shoes, or I'm going to be very uncomfortable, right? So that's the thing. Doing something you don't understand instinctively is hard. And that is why I would love to see more female leadership within products across the board, not at Klarna, but across the board.
Yeah. So another topic that I thought was interesting about your background is that you've been with the company for 10 years. You've seen the industry evolve, but you've also seen your function, like the chief marketing role. And I have a past in marketing, certainly on the product strategy side of things. So certainly interested in hearing this is like, how have you seen your team, both talent acquisition, talent management, and then the effect of AI and agentic capabilities, both on your ability to decision, to version, to be more efficient and effective. How's that looked over the last 10 years?
I mean, I think the interesting thing with marketing is that the marketing fundamentals haven't really changed, right? The core truths of marketing and human behavior haven't changed. The tactics have just absolutely exploded. I think we feel like Cannes is fantastic in many ways, but you also get anxious when you leave because you have like 200 new tactics. Like, have you tried this? Have you heard this? Have you seen that? Why aren't you not on this platform?
Yeah.
Why aren't you using these data sets? And it's like,
and what's the difference between like what's really important here?
Exactly. But
Right.
you have like the number of tactics have just 100x'd in the last 10 years, right? And that is, to some extent, we hire a lot. And this sounds cheesy when saying it, but not for skill, but really for attitude. Like, you have to be extremely curious.
Yeah,
like in the age of
that's a huge topic. Yeah, totally. You like that level of curiosity. You have to be willing to change, willing to learn new stuff, because that's how you get involved with AI effectively. It starts with curiosity.
Curiosity, agency, and confidence.
Yeah,
those are the things. Like, you have to be curious enough to explore everything. You have to have agency to actually say, you know, that I come from an agency background as well. There was a time when people were like, "Oh, there's a piece of text to be written. I need a copywriter." You don't need a copywriter. You can write you're not illiterate, right? You can write it. Oh, I need a copywriter. So agency, especially in the age of AI, is extremely important. Just do it. Like, do it yourself. Then confidence, just in all of these 10,000, there are millions of ways of doing things. Pick two, be confident, and execute above and beyond.
I think, honestly, that's such an understated one, which is there are a million ways to skin any cat now. You can use that tool, this tool, you can combine tools, you can do parts of the workflow yourself. I think that having that innate understanding that the outcome is the outcome, and there are many different journeys. But I would add another one to that, which is standards. I think if you add that to the three mentioned, I think that you're not going to be hallucinated to and accept it. You're not going to produce AI slop because you're like, oh, the AI does it now. It's like, you do it.
Exactly. I like that. Having high standards. Because as we said with Sebastian and him caring, I always tell my teams, like, I do think there are ripple effects from caring about even a banner ad. If someone sees that, hey, they've put extra effort into this ad, into the craft, they're probably a company that puts extra effort into things. Their products probably have extra, like, there is this kind of ripple effect.
Yeah, it creates this level of trust, no matter where you are in sort of the ecosystem, whether it's the founder talking or it's a banner ad, to your point. And so, final question. So, agentic commerce, big topic, right? We've been talking, Rio on the pod have been talking a lot about sort of like, think OpenClaw for the masses, right? Think of having a consumer facing agent that does the buying for you, that can be programmed and governed and managed by a person. What do you think of agentic commerce?
So what we're seeing currently, at least, and I'm obviously always right in the short term and wrong in the long term, but what we're seeing currently, which I think that many underestimate, is that for the vast majority of people, shopping is an interest and a hobby, right? So what we're seeing, what I foresee when it comes to agentic is, as with many things with AI, you're going to outsource the boring stuff. Toilet paper. Toothpaste,
CPG stuff,
I need to restock on my contacts. But like, when people think, which I don't think is true, when people think that they're going to fully let an AI plan their holiday, I don't think they understand how people, like, my wife loves clicking through these hotels. Like, when she buys the handbag, like, she has 20 tabs open, she's chatting to her friends about, like, the process is underestimated.
Like, you can't take the human agency out of that.
You cannot convince me that someone would ever let an AI agent buy their wedding dress. Like, if you can find me one person that says, okay, Claude,
no matter how well profiled that agent is,
you can
that
show
knows
me. You can show me the best prompt ever. No one is gonna, as of yet, outsource their wedding dress. And I believe we're gonna see that separation between interest buying and
and sort of like commoditized
buying, which is going to be fully agentic.
Well, this was great. We could talk for hours. We should certainly have you guys on a full pod. This has been awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the rest of Cannes, and thanks for going in depth around a lot of these topics. And we'll see you all next episode. We're back live at Hearst House, Signal and Noise with Rio Longacre. And we've got Jim Weiss, the founder and chairman of Real Chemistry. And we were just talking about what Real Chemistry leans into when it comes to the healthcare and pharma industries. We had a great conversation yesterday with the CEO of Publicis Health Media. PHM is what they're calling themselves now.
Right.
So that, yeah, Rio
Who
and
was
I were
that?
trying to act.
Who did you have in here?
Andrea Chapman.
Yes,
Yeah.
she was on a panel with one of my people actually.
Yeah, and
yesterday,
so we
too,
had
at
to
Advocate.
wax poetic about what we kind of know about the pharma industry.
Well, so PHM, we actually have a connection.
Yeah, Rio's got some foundational subject matter
You worked in
expertise.
pharma?
Yeah.
Yeah, where?
I've done work at Pfizer, Genentech, Roche, Amgen, Bayer.
And what's your
Um,
zone?
It's marketing. So, but I work in MarTech ad tech, so it's marketing transformation. I've also worked with Sanofi. I've also worked with Novo Nordisk. I've also worked with Novartis. I've worked with like 19 of the top 20.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Real Chemistry used to be called W2O. It's had a lot of names. Actually, I was not a naming expert, so it started as Weisscom. So I worked in the industry first, and Real Chemistry has become among the leading, agencies to support, I would say, activation, communication, marketing for.
So you're selling to pharma
health
marketers,
products.
basically, like
Correct.
brand
Yeah,
managers.
yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
cool.
we're definitely a company that has grown through those relationships. I come out of Genentech, but I also spent time at Sanofi
Oh, nice.
in
Okay.
Paris. I mean,
It's not a bad place to work, right?
It was not a bad place to work. And I actually did spend time in Cannes. We did a lot of our meetings here.
Living or just visiting?
Well, we did a lot of meetings, and when you could bring doctors, and gather doctors for events, private events, we would do them here.
Before it was considered corruption.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, whatever.
Sunshine Act. Right?
Before it became, something you really had to think about more than we did.
And so we talked with her. We talked a lot about sort of the differences, let's say, between marketing to healthcare professionals, the doctors themselves.
Right.
And so I'd love to hear what your learnings have been around how you how that's changed, especially with influencer,
Everything's changed,
right? And so that sort of transformation that you've seen, and then the other side of the script is the direct to consumer experience that I've had a ton of experience. I was telling Rio the other day that I had to spend 4 hours rating for we were doing an awards program for pharma ads,
Sure.
and so I had to watch like 4 hours of pharma ads. Which was
that for the Cannes line?
No, it was for it's an industry body. No, it's an industry body that's
You look very filmy. I think we've been.
It's
in
a
the same
pharma
room.
industry body, and the name is escaping me for right now. But I was surrounded by these pharma execs, and they wanted somebody from the MarTech ad tech space to add a different perspective. So my perspective was like, wow, I've learned about more symptoms than I knew even existed.
Well, I'm really glad you're talking about MarTech and ad tech, because I would say more than probably any other firm that's independent, I think the Publicis people absolutely have leveraged it. We are, that's how we rose. We actually in the mid-aughts got involved in, social channels and data and all the things that were just burgeoning at that point, and using that in marketing. So now we talk about the notion of AI changing healthcare, but that's through research and development, and then how we interact with doctors. That changes the way we are going to leverage ad tech for pharmaceutical marketing, right?
I always thought
Because how you reach docs is going to change. It has already changed.
But it's interesting to say that. I mean, like how you reach docs. I think that's very important for people who don't really know the industry, right? A lot of pharma marketing. I mean, sure, there's a patient side, but it's mostly the ads you saw, Brett. Those DTC,
right?
Which are just generic. They're not just.
But they're more recent. That's come around in the last 10, 15. It's not that long.
It was illegal until around 2000. Actually,
Right.
to do direct to consumer ads.
And we were prevented at Genentech when I was in-house. You couldn't do it. The view was, look, we follow the data to get to the right outcomes. So published scientific data was how a doctor was approached. And you either did that at a big medical conference. If you've ever been to them, sure you have.
Congress.
There's also these big booths that exist, right? That you walk through. We help pharma design and build those. That's one of our services.
The physicians would come by, you'd capture that, you'd try to scan them, right? Then you'd follow up afterwards, right? I mean, there's this whole approach for interacting with physicians that's, I think, been like honed over.
And there are rules around it, right? Pretty strict rules.
Or like, so is it research oriented, where you'd be selling or sharing research with them from an educational perspective?
So we have a big division, a medical communications and education group that helps a pharma or biotech or another healthcare company, medical device, diagnostic company, take their science and get that published in peer-reviewed journals or presented at big medical meetings. At ASCO, which was the big cancer meeting just about a month ago, we trained, I think it was about 150 different physicians and oncologists to present their data at the meeting.
Yeah. And this is data directly tied to the R&D and the innovation.
Exactly, right. So this is like from a phase 1, 2, or 3 clinical trial. Sometimes it's the early stage stuff. But you may have heard about a new drug in pancreatic cancer, for example. So we help that organization, Revolution Medicines, publicize that to the doctor audience at that meeting, and get ready for that presentation, which ended up getting a standing ovation because it was a big breakthrough in pancreatic cancer.
It's a different kind of influence. It's like, because I think yesterday we were talking about the influencers, and then immediately you have a connotation that comes to mind, and I'm like, I think we're talking about a different set of subject matter experts.
Well,
that are bringing research and data.
But you
to
guys,
doctors.
Look, Hearst is working on this. You guys are working on longevity. You have a division that, a book, and I just met some of the guys involved in that. Longevity is where it's going. That's the shift, right? The shift is, I believe pharmaceuticals are moving from, and the whole industry, healthcare industry, is moving from treatment, which is what we've done traditionally, to prevention.
Because that would be a welcome shift. I mean,
it's great
to hear.
I would agree. And I think there's a lot of excitement around that. And therefore, it becomes much more of a consumer product.
Well,
you've got to treat it like a consumer product.
I like that point you just made. I think that, I don't think people realize, some of these therapies are so effective now. Some survival rates for some cancers are 90, 95%, 80%, whereas 20%, 15% even 20 years ago. And a lot of these diseases are more manageable and you can live with them, right?
Well, yes. And that is the goal of new cancer treatment. Instead of giving you chemotherapy, which is basically toxic chemicals, is there a way to do that in a more targeted way? If we understand the molecular makeup of your cancer, which we do now. So again, AI and others can speed that up. So again, now we're going into the deeper zone, non-marketing, of how this new tech can help healthcare companies change the way they treat a disease. We could technically treat people individually based on the makeup of their cancer.
So cool.
And the goal,
medicine, right?
It's personalized care. I adapted to the personalized marketing approach that you guys were using in consumer products and have applied that to health. But you got to be real careful how you do that.
Yeah.
Right. Because,
and just for clarity, we are not Hearst, but we're partnered with Hearst for CAN. But yes.
Right. So I think
we're big fans of Hearst.
We're big fans of Hearst.
So am I. I mean, I've gotten to know them and they're great. And I have a really good friend who apparently everybody here knows that, used to work here as well. So I knew a lot about you guys, but we've been partnering with you. And I believe we are partnering soon on a conference with Hearst,
nice.
A healthcare conference. But the idea of influence and influencers, there are now a whole group of physicians. Remember, they were not on Twitter. They were not on TikTok. They are now.
Yeah.
Now
they're adopting the modern communication mechanism.
Well, there's a couple reasons for that. But probably the biggest one is how the practice is shifting as well, where you're talking about peptides, GLP-1s, you're talking about hormones, right? Testosterone and other hormones and supplements as a way to keep you out of the system.
How are farmers, from a communication standpoint, dealing with that? Because I was over a friend's house. I'm not kidding. And he said, hold on one second. He goes and gets this little glass jarred and he takes a shot. He had ordered a peptide. It was like a
Yeah,
GLP-1
sure. Yeah.
from Mexico or something. He's injecting this.
Yeah.
And he's saying, "Oh, just go buy it. It's no big deal. You can order them online, right?" It's how like I mean, it must be disrupting the industry to certainly. No, I wouldn't be doing that.
I would say it's disrupting the industry in a way that's mostly ultimately positive, because now you've probably heard of Eli Lilly, and they just they were one of the
version now too, right?
They now have an oral version, so that's different than injecting. But you can go direct to them. You're not going to the farm. It's called Lilly Direct. So something like that we've never really seen before, where you can go directly to the pharmaceutical company and get the drug that you want. I mean, a doctor is involved in that process, but not like they were. So
You need a script from physicians.
correct. Correct. So you're buying it direct, but some people are going to estheticians and longevity experts. Now, I tend to tell people, why don't you go through your doctor? They ask me about peptides all the time. I said, well, is there any better peptide than one that's been studied as long and as well as the peptides that the pharma industry has launched? I mean, it's kind of like, if you can get, now the issue was price and insurance, but all that's coming down, right? And now there's drugs like Repatha, and they're called PCSK9s, also becoming oral. And you can take those to get your cholesterol down to levels below 100, and LDL, which is the bad cholesterol.
Yep.
Mine's 20.
20?
Taking it, yes. And so the concept is, again, if we can do the things that will help, prevent plaque buildup or inflammation that cause the heart attacks and strokes, I mean, that's amazing. Losing weight, obviously, I lost a lot. I lost over 100 pounds, over the course of my transformation from, again, I started a business and raised kids and got really heavy, and, GLP-1s play a role now. They didn't then. I mean, then it was bariatric surgery, but bariatric surgery is, there were a lot of complications with it.
Yeah.
And it creates a permanent, you can't eat, so the question is, can these GLP-1s and, now oral drugs help you, I call prevent the event, right? So prevent you from getting fat, prevent you from having a heart attack or stroke or any of these other debilitating conditions. But some of us genetically have diseases,
predisposed, yeah.
that are, but even there, the industry is doing a lot of research and development. Look, the industry used to be focused on, if you probably heard this, Me Too drugs.
Yeah.
And now it's really, it's very few of them are focused in that area. They're really looking to create, I'd say, diagnostic and data-driven, personalized medicines.
Yeah, and
right? That potentially could become cures.
Yeah, and for conditions that very small subsegments of the population
Very small
have.
that never had a chance. That's the orphan population, but more critically, in these big diseases, like I said, there are drugs that are making an impact that we've never seen before. And I mean, I've seen this over my career, and Real Chemistry has been there to launch. I would say we're in our 25th year, and we've probably launched 25 of the greatest breakthroughs in cancer and heart disease, and diagnostics and treatment that the industry's seen.
Yeah, and so two topics I wanted to cover. One was sort of discoverability and how that's changed, right? You talked about big conferences, big thought leadership events, but there's other ways to do that. Things like SEO and AEF, right? In terms of
we have something we launched called Health Geo, right? And that's all based on now, the new reality, which is AI-driven search.
Yeah, and how do you as a brand be discoverable either through the platforms, the LLMs that the doctors are using, or for the general public?
You have to do a lot of research. You've got to analyze a lot about, online physician behavior and nurse behavior and insurance company, because, it's a whole ecosystem that we're trying to impact. But there was just some news about Epic coming into, you guys probably know what Epic is, but they're they're kind of one of the premier leading healthcare.
They're an EMR. Yeah.
Yeah, an EMR. And that electronic medical record world has been turned upside down. I'm part of a private equity firm called New Mountain Capital that owns us. They also created a company called Datavant. And so you know Datavant. Datavant is, sort of the data exchange, for all the healthcare companies.
Like HIPAA compliant audience.
Exactly. So that's, now you may or may not know, I don't know if they mentioned it yesterday in Publicis, but they use one of the platforms that was part of Real Chemistry was called Swoop. And Swoop does exactly that, but we've spun that out as a separate company.
That was part of your company?
It was,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, because, while we will leverage Swoop audience, generation and curation, the preponderance of what we do is everything from live events and influence and digital influence. So yeah, we are targeting doctors, but look, we've got to meet them where they are, right? And that can be, in person, in office.
That's impacting product launch.
There's a lot of ways to do it.
A big way.
Big way.
Because I mean, that's it. It's such, and AI must be too, because product launch, you use these massive spreadsheets and all the different tactics and between market access and marketing and visual aids. And this, it just goes on and on.
Well, Andrew was on a panel yesterday with my colleague, Elizabeth. We just bought her company last year. I met her at Cannes and we bought her company as we build up our own paid media capabilities. The debate around that table was, what do we call this multi-channel, omni-channel world? And they're like, no, let's stop saying that. This is marketing.
Are we still having that conversation?
This is the modern marketing of today.
It's just marketing.
It's
right?
just marketing.
By definition, it's omni.
Of course it's omni-channel.
Then it was omni-channel. Like
right.
Every few years is a new
tool. Yeah.
I know, but crazy just sitting with some of the creators. I mean, listening to there's so much changing so fast. It's how do you keep up with it? The bottom line is, are you going to market on TikTok and YouTube? Or are you going to market, in a doctor's office? Yeah. Well, actually, you're going to do all of it.
Yeah.
But the biggest and most critical bit isn't only the data that's helping you target, it's the content. So Elizabeth made a great point, and I agree with it. You can do all the micro-targeting you want, but if you don't have great creative and content to feed that, well, then that's so. Well,
what do you have?
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so everybody was, last year, it's the end of advertising. It's the end of this industry. It's like, no, it's not. I'm like, you still need.
It's not the end of creative. Yeah, creative right? is more important.
But I think it's more important than ever.
Yeah, and you hyper target, but you better have.
But that's the cool part of being at Cannes to see it.
Yeah.
I obviously, but thankfully, my firm won. We were shortlisted and. Actually, not technically shortlisted. We won some bronze awards.
Yeah,
which was cool. I mean, we didn't get to go on the stage because they don't do that for bronze. And then
I won a bronze.
Well, last year we got a gold, which was really our first break into it. But the reason I say that is, for years we started as a legacy investor relations and public relations firm. Creative was not naturally what was contained in that. You wrote press releases and placed them in earned magazines and publications like Hearst, like all across your whole universe. We just pitched those stories. Now we are doing so much so differently, from going directly to the doctor to going and presenting that or showing that at a booth. We can do all that, and I don't know how a firm today can do it unless they can do most of it.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I mean, we could go on for a while.
Full pod, by the
yeah, a full pod.
We talk normally we do like 60, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and vice versa, because my podcast is very much focused. I just had Dave Fredrickson come on from, and we're about to launch that. But I talked to people like Misty Copeland about her, hip replacement.
Yeah.
And how does she go dance on the Oscars? And
yeah.
So I do talk to people, Patrick Dempsey, about cancer wraparound care, which we didn't even get into, about using acupuncture and diet and exercise and shamans, which is what my wife had. So I think we should spend more time. But healthcare, I will say this is a bit underappreciated and misunderstood.
Yep.
But to me,
Underrepresented at Canva.
Yep.
right. But think about it. Like when you were growing up and your mom said there's nothing more important than your health, right? That's what when people wished for things, they would say, I just want to stay healthy for as long as I can. Right. But that's actually becoming true. It's the biggest consumer product there is.
Yeah.
But I think about it, look at Ken, CPG everywhere.
Right.
But like when you look at how much money is spent on marketing and on media and barely see it here. So I'm glad you're here. This is
Yeah.
cool.
I'm glad to be here.
Hey, well, thanks a
I'm
lot. It was
glad
great.
I finally figured
great
out that I should
chatting.
be here.
Yeah. Thanks everybody,
great,
and
guys.
we'll see you next time. I've got a friend and a guy I've known for a long time, and a former colleague, Matt Krepsick, who is the CEO of Media Radar, has a long experience at Nielsen, Quotient in between that and Media Radar. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you.
Great to have you on.
I must say, this is the nicest studio in all of Cannes.
Yeah, have you been to more than one?
You have air conditioning, which is great.
Doing this outside would not be fun.
Yeah, I'm very happy we're not sitting on a veranda.
Yeah, it was hot at 7 a.m.
I think we're hitting 40 degrees Celsius.
Yeah,
here.
I think I heard yesterday was the hottest day in France recorded history. In the average temperature, just from an average temperature, but it was 45 degrees Celsius, 44 degrees Celsius in Paris. That's like 110.
It's like
it reminds me of Japan. You spent some time,
or it's like Dubai temperature.
yeah, and you spent some time. So I'd love to talk about because I think it's a fascinating background of your experience at Nielsen. You were kind of a lifer for a while. I mean, it was a good 15 years.
It's almost a good 2 decades. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've lived in the hottest of hot places in Singapore.
Lived in Singapore. Which
Yeah.
is great.
Which I'm sure this you're like, this is nothing, right? This
You
is
learn the Singapore walk, which is you just take it slow and easy. And if you just it's not like you're in New York City running down Madison Avenue racing to a meeting. In Cannes, you just have to have the Singapore walk. Just slow it down a little bit, take it a little bit slower, casual, and you'll realize you're just not going to get as hot.
Yeah.
It's nice.
And then wear like underlayers to absorb the, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, tell everybody, and so just for the audience, Matt and I met when it was actually right around the time you purchased Visual IQ, right?
Yeah, or I think maybe I came back from Singapore, maybe when we first met.
Yeah, and I had come through the acquisition of Exalate with Mark Zagorski and that team.
Yeah.
And we formed what was called the Nielsen Marketing Cloud. And we realized quickly that attribution and measurement was a key play. That if we could connect this to the data in the platform that we had, it would be a pretty powerful sort of flywheel, which we've all heard again and again in this industry. But tell me like your trajectory.
Yeah.
Like leading up to that moment in time.
Leading up to that moment in time. Well, so here's what I'd say. The advice I give folks, if you want to become a leader in this industry, start off as a climbing guide and then drive a Zamboni. That is really where you learn all your life lessons.
Yeah.
From then on out, it's like everything's.
Once you conquer that fear of death.
Once you conquer fear of death and you learn how to mow an ice rink, like those are quality life skills.
Yeah.
And
which you've done all.
Which I've done all.
I think you met your wife, from what I heard.
I met
when
my
you
wife
were managing an ice rink.
At an
right?
ice rink. Yeah, it was very much to date myself, a very Ice Castle-esque moment. I was a hockey player and coach, and like I ran an ice rink and drove the Zamboni, and she was like the figure skating coach.
So who's the better skater?
I would say my wife is a better skater. Not going to go out there and say I'm a better skater.
It's like the hockey versus figure skating competition here. I wonder.
I'm just not going to participate in that.
Yeah.
We decided like we're going to go, like she's got her swim lane, I have my swim lane. So.
Yeah. So you were heavily involved in sort of the media mix.
Yeah. So the fast forward. So all joking aside, I kind of came back into the data and analytics space. I always loved analytics and math for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Started writing my first kind of computer programs for my dad when I was like a 7 or 8 year old. So I love those kind of challenging kind of data and measurement problems. And I would always say across my entire career, across most of my life, I've loved that intersection of data, analytics and analysis and intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? And in many ways, I think about data as like raw fuel, and I think about analytics and intelligence really, or analytics really is like, how do you glean kind of insight from data?
Yeah.
Right? And so in the early days of marketing mix modeling, I got to work with some of the coolest leaders in that space, like different founders that started lots of cool companies. Really were looking to farm kind of sparse data at that time period. Like I remember when we were collecting data, working for clients, we were physically looking through print magazines
Yeah.
to get a
Yeah.
sense for like how many ads were there, or we would like anytime we could get a data set from like I remember shelf talkers became big, and like we were seeing those trends over time, and it was fascinating just how little data we had in the early days of marketing mix modeling, and how fast that's come and how broad that's kind of grown.
Yeah.
However, we're still trying to do the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
it's like we're still
counting, right? I think
we're
is a
still
key piece.
we're still counting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're still like just trying to figure out like what is actually happening. So
Yeah.
what I love about media and advertising in our space is like it is constant innovation. It never gets stale. It's one of the coolest industries in the sense that we have every year there's something new or different. And oftentimes what's new is old again.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and yeah, I think that's a key point. I think it's a key theme with MMM. I mean, what I'm seeing, having come from both Media Radar, I mean, Nielsen, which I wasn't heavily involved in the MMM practice, but then I went to Neustar and we had the market share product, right? Which we really commercialized, and it was very managed services driven, and most of the work they did was data collection and data normalization.
So at Nielsen, we had a big team. We had over 600 employees. And I would say over half the work was data collection, data cleaning, data management, data mapping.
Yeah.
The fact that a can of Coke is not a can of Coke everywhere in the world is really hard to kind of come across.
Yeah. And what do you think that the so I'm seeing companies like Mutinex, which are former head of MMM at Neustar.
Hen's a great leader there.
Yeah. And Mike Finnerty, he's the U.S. president, right? He was like, I do now with 20 people what I did with a team of 220 when I was at Neustar, because they've built agentic workflows that are based on skill, and a lot of it is the data wrangling.
Yeah,
it's the data mapping, it's the identity resolution, it's all of that stuff. Are you seeing that it's still the same practice, but are you seeing that that's going to have a transformative effect on MMM in terms of the actionability and the time to value, right, for insights?
I think you raise an important like nugget there, which is as you think about our evolution, like we would say, hey, we have more and more data than we ever had before, so therefore life should be better. And the answer is like, no, life is getting harder. More data doesn't mean we're better off. And so, and oftentimes you have data that comes in that's like biased, or it's from somebody's perspective or their point of view, or they're grading your own homework. And it's like, we want to look good from this perspective. I like my left side versus my right side. You know? And so everybody's got opinions. And so step one is like, there is vastly more data than we ever used to have. The challenge, I would say, is you think about more data is really kind of two, maybe three kind of core things that I would talk about. And maybe I call this like the confidence challenge or the conviction challenge, which is
data confidence or data conviction, data trust.
You think about there's three things or three layers to that. There's trust. Like, do I trust the source of this data?
Yeah.
Right. And like, is it reliable? Does it come from a source that we kind of understand how it's being collected or how it's being created? So do I trust it? Two, and I think this is where what marketing mix models rely upon so much, and I think we as in our industry have to get better at it.
And that's a big topic just in general. Even how AI is architected, it's all around building context engines, right?
So context is so important to the data observation, right?
Yeah.
You may see an ad aired on TV, but think about this: the impact that ad had if it occurred at 7 p.m. versus 2 a.m.
Yep.
Wildly different. That's a very simple view of context, but context matters.
Yeah, there's contextual context, there's behavioral context, there's device context. There's all these different ways to read.
There's the placement, right? So think about, we do a lot of work in the sports space now, and we're kind of bringing together like what we call the kind of total event measurement, right?
Yep.
So we can look at the ad load, all the bumper ads, pick up the holographic ads, like
within CTV environments and streaming video,
CTV, streaming video, even on the broadcast feeds, like you're seeing the new holographic limos. And then then you think of the context of the Knicks game, right?
Yep.
And you're looking there and you're watching the game and you see certainly the State Farm stanchions.
Yep.
Fantastic. They pop really well. Once you realize the base of the hoop is the Coinbase base, you're like, I like that play on words.
Yeah.
And then like the context of like Tissot has the shot clock, but you don't see it as much. Right?
Yeah.
And so as you think about those, all three of those great placements, if you're in the stadium as a viewer, all fantastic. But when you're watching the broadcast feed, the context of each of those quote unquote ad units creates a different experience. So second for me is context. And I think that is something that's so important in our industry is
it affects pricing
everything.
strategy, should affect pricing strategy,
Yeah.
should affect how you look at outcomes measurement.
It affects outcomes, it affects performance, it affects the ad and creative and how do you break through in those moments.
Yeah.
So I think context is super important. And then the third thing that I would say in my mind that's paramount is actually speed.
Yeah.
And the thing I would say about AI is I think it's super fun. I've built a ton of agents and models and they're fantastic. And we have a lot of fun with them. Sorry if anybody out there has ever met Alan, but
yeah, that's your little talking. It's about the size of like a credit card or a.
It is, yeah. I originally built Alan on a Raspberry Pi with a Halo accelerator chip on it.
Yeah, this is what we're gonna get really geeky, right? And you gave it a voice.
We did give it. I did give it a voice. We were going into a meeting and everybody's like, "Hey, can I talk?" People were wanting to come up and talk to Alan.
Yeah,
he was emailing people and like interacting with folks and like this is really cool.
And did you build this with OpenClaw?
We used some.
You and your son, or who did this?
I did
using
this one.
we.
I did this one. I like to use purple.
Yeah,
it's a collective.
It's that cups a collective.
It takes a village.
Yeah,
yeah. And so like we built this. We built the original version and prototype of this, and everybody would come up and want to talk to it.
Yeah,
like hey, I'd love to talk to Alan. I'm like, man, I have to build him a microphone and a voice, and so
to humanize it.
What was cool is like I was able to humanize it in about 30 minutes. We brought over a speaker and brought it over a voice, and I downloaded a quick voice kit, and then he has a interesting British Australian kind of
that like hard to decipher which.
It's it goes one way or the other, and I think we were just moving too quickly and kind of merge those voice protocols, but it works.
Yeah. So let's dive back into. I want to dive a little bit, like double click into the context conversation, right?
Well, real quick on speed. So like
speed, which is the third pillar that you were.
And then we go back to context. What I think is so important about speed, and you kind of brought this up on the marketing mix side, is like speed actually reduces. I think AI helps us go faster.
Yeah.
It compresses the distance from the starting point to the end point, right?
Yeah.
And so over time, technology in our society has really accomplished kind of two kind of core things. It's impacted speed and it's actually democratized access to things.
Yeah.
Right. Think about like if you wanted to travel from the US to Cannes 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how long that trip would take? You'd have to get on wherever you live in the US, you'd have to get to a port, probably the port of New York.
Yeah.
You would then get on a steamship or a boat, spend a week sailing across the Atlantic. I have no idea, by the way, how long it takes to get across the Atlantic. So don't quote me on that one. You can do your own research at home. And it would have taken so much time.
Yeah.
Right? And then we've moved from the world of like the Conestoga wagon and the steamship to, we have airplanes now.
Yeah.
And then
we just interviewed the CEO of Boom Supersonic, Blake Scholl, who's trying to commercialize a supersonic travel without the boom.
So think about that as like, it compressed time and it gave speed, right?
Yeah.
We could get around the world and move places faster. Just one little example. So I'm a big believer that speed and that time to decisioning is so important.
Yeah.
And then I think the second thing is,
and that's a big problem with MMM.
Yeah.
It would take months and months, not only to bring the data together, but then it would take months, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months to get insights.
Sometimes it felt like
budget cycle.
Exactly. It's like by the time you're doing an MMM model in June, by the time the model's done, it's like we're talking about what happened last year.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so like you just have such a distance from like the actual
the reality of consumer experience, and things have shifted in that time. There's competitive shifts, there's market shifts, there's consumer shifts, and you're making answers on sort of batch data, like old, 100%. Outdated batch data.
The second part of that, though, on the AI view is it's democratization, right?
Yeah.
And think about this, like for a long time, knowledge required like root memorization.
Yep.
Right. And do you know why? Because there was only one copy of the book. Right.
Well,
and
it was oral culture.
It was
I mean, if you
oral
go all the way
culture.
back to ancient Greece, that's how they passed things
So
down.
knowledge initially was, we then invented the printing press, and we
Yep.
said, wow, we can now share.
The Chinese invented the
Yeah.
printing press, and then they shut it down. The next dynasty came into play.
And so then you had the printing press, and then you had libraries.
Yeah.
They would store this, and
Yeah.
you would go to university
Yeah.
because the university had the library, and you could get access to this information.
Yeah. And
So
then
again,
Google digitized the world's knowledge.
and then we create greater scale where we can now produce books, and people can own more books in their home, and those became cheaper and more accessible. And then you think about the original kind of search algorithms, like they were just indexing data.
Yeah.
It was the modern, like, Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah.
Just with a
blue links are sort of a modern Dewey Decimal system.
Just with a cooler interface.
Yeah.
I do miss the pulling
and
out
then
the
an ad monetization model of like paid versus organic and the rest of it. But yeah, so back to context, because we're going to go off it. So context to me, I mean, I think of media quality. So there's a report that was just put up by Sim, one of a guy that stopped by the party last night. Erez Levin was a part contributor to that, right?
Gotcha.
And they did a ton of research, and they basically tried to come up with a metric that said that media quality is, it's basically context. There are a bunch of different dimensions that judge how you should price your CPM. So not every ad impression is equal, based on everything from viewability to device, and it gives you kind of a score. It's something that's kind of been ignored in the industry, right? In terms of,
I think there's two things that are ignored. What I would argue, and I haven't read the article or paper, so I'll have to go read it. But I agree. One, media quality is 100% driven by content. I think it's driven by two things. The quality of your media is going to be driven by the context of that placement, the ad unit, and the craft of the ad itself.
Yeah.
I actually think really good creative or craft can outperform the moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if you have,
even in like crappy outstream video, right?
You can find, and that's why, in my world of like early on in my life doing tons of marketing mix modeling and attribution modeling, what do we always come back with? The number one driver of performance is creative.
Yeah.
And it just is.
Yeah. And that's a common theme we're hearing from a lot of people, right? It's the rise. It's like art. There was a kind of an art and science, sort of a shift towards the science place of it, with direct response, programmatic.
Yeah, but science, the cool thing about the science side is it made you feel like you had control.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I know these levers, I can tune these dials. And, now we've gone from like the horse and buggy to like, we're all flying A380 jumbo jet planes with all these dials and knobs that
Yeah. Well, we thought that all this data that we were now collecting and amassing originally, and we talked to Scott McKinley, and an old friend of yours, right? We talked to Scott McKinley about this, and he said, really, at the core of it, the data underneath the largely digital ecosystem is actually crap.
Yeah. Well,
right. There's a lot of dirtiness there.
That goes back to my first point on data. It's like trust. Like what Scott is focused on and is like, how do I solve the trust problem?
Yeah.
He's 100% right. Like, how do you solve trust is so important. Context, super important. Speed. And so if I were to say like what we all need to solve in our industry, whether it's market mix modeling or programmatic buying or planning or anything, it's still down to those three simple levers. Like, do I have trust? Do I have the context of the data? And can this go quickly?
Yeah.
Do I have speed?
Yeah. And speed is where AI comes into play. It's not going to come into play from
speed's an enabler.
Yeah.
I think AI can also help with context because it's going to bring in
pattern recognition across.
You can bring in more metadata.
Into
it. And I think that's super important. I don't know if AI is going to help with trust, but I mean, I think in many ways it might be an impediment to trust because then you look at some of the results from AI models. You're like, is it hallucinating? Is that real? Is the data real?
Yeah.
Can I fact check this?
Let's double click into metadata because you were part of, or you at least saw. I don't know how involved you were with the Gracenote acquisition at Nielsen. And they're powering everything from what's playing on my my car stereo, right? Song and band and that sort of thing. And now we're starting to see like companies like 12 Labs. There's a whole bunch of players out there that are getting really deep metadata around the context of video, right? And everything that's happening frame by frame within a video for both product placement, for advertising, for all that sort of stuff. Again, gives you context to what's happening in a video from the first second to the end of the video. How do you think metadata has sort of changed, especially as it applies to video advertising?
Yeah. Well, there's two things there. Like, is there more metadata out there? 100%. I think that's what's super, super exciting to kind of see as that kind of comes forth. Like, what all can we capture? Because it's getting easier, faster, cheaper to record more, to capture more data. So
Yeah.
you can be watching somebody sitting at your couch, watching a TV show, and they're eating pizza on this TV screen. That's interesting context.
Yeah.
Right. And the question is like, do I want an overlay, a Pepsi or a Coke ad right now? Or
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
And so I think it's super interesting. I'm unclear what we do with it just yet,
Yeah.
but there's moments of like, okay, there's a dog on TV screen right now. Like, do we advertise pet food? Like, does
Is it just sort of like contextual targeting compounded, or just more granular contextual targeting at the video level, or is it something more than
I
that?
don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I think as an industry, I think what we will do is like the contextual targeting bit, like we know that trick.
Yeah.
And we know it's important to have that association, and when you have those associations, they have a powerful impact, and like you can have a
Yeah.
positive impact. So that's why we do branding. That's why you do co-marketing campaigns. So like the contextual side of that, like, yeah, I think there's some signals there. Are there other things that come out of that? I don't know yet.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like you have a certain creatives can break through in certain moments and ones can't. Like, I think more to come on that. I do think there's a lot of value in that metadata. I think there's also a huge challenge in the sense that like we're living through a world of like just so much more fragmentation on the content side.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah.
so while on one hand, like I love the idea of producing metadata and like what it can kind of the questions it can potentially answer, and like
Yeah.
some interesting insights. And I think we're going to learn a lot. And as an industry, we're going to get better, and somebody's going to come up with some really cool ideas and products and ad units. However, there is way more content.
Yeah.
Content's blowing up. If I think about, a stat that we have talked a lot about at Media Radar is like, hey, you go back, 15, 20 years ago, you would say live sports news and entertainment represented 20% of all video content consumption. Original scripted content was like another 70% of all content consumption. And there was like this social video YouTube thing, and that was like 10% of all viewing content.
Yeah.
Right. Today, what's wild is like sports and live sports and events are still 20% of all viewing consumption.
Yep.
But user-generated content has grown to almost 40 to 50% of all content consumption.
Yeah.
Right?
And we've seen.
And the original scripted content is now maybe 30 to 40%.
Yeah, it's we talked about this, the Hollywood economy versus the creator economy. It's one of the main reasons I told my son to leave the film industry, because I'm like, there is a shift going here, and he's going to be a business major at Syracuse. But part of it was like, yeah, I'm not sure, how much long form content does have value, right? In podcasting and in certain, but now they're starting to with the micro drama, starting to cut it down into pieces, gamifying it, and improving the monetization of individual content. But I think to your point, it's we're seeing just an overwhelming amount of content across all channels.
Yeah, and I think that makes it harder to be an advertiser, to be a marketer, to work with data, because it's almost like there's what's the sailor quote, like water everywhere drink. It's like we have data everywhere, and like, we're not sure which bit of it is good.
Yeah. And you have like Scott Brinker out there who's written some really interesting papers recently. One with Databricks, where he talked about data as the new operating layer, right? And how we're in this sort of third generation of MarTech.
I don't know if I haven't read that either, but I'm a firm believer data is your new infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like
and everything plugs into that. And as long as you've got some sort of semantic middle layer that's the translation layer, maybe unstructured large data stores, your agents built on top can do a lot of the decisioning and can have specific skills built in mind.
I would abstract that and say, as I think about like advice I would give people, I would say you really have to have data has to be your new infrastructure.
Yeah. And it's not oil. Let's not say that.
Oil.
Yeah, it's much more than that. It's the machinery behind it.
You have to think of it like your infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right. Not just, something you go to the gas station and drop in your tank. You have to have a data first infrastructure, I think, number one.
and it's fueling the composability trend.
Two,
right?
you have to then have, however you choose to do it as a company or as a business or as a platform or as a broadcaster or a publisher, you also have to have some level of intelligence on top of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that intelligence, it might be AI driven.
Yeah.
It might be human driven, but like
Yeah.
you have to have some intelligence layer on top of that.
Yeah, and that's governance in the rule.
100%. The way to think about it is like how do I interpret? It's like interpretation and governance application.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What that is.
Yeah,
And
that's really the simple way of describing kind of what everybody says, semantic layers, and they talk about middleware.
Yeah.
It's
And then the third piece of the puzzle, I'd say, is like it's got to be, you got to focus on speed and timeliness.
Yeah,
Speed's so important. In our world, like we're just at a different pace.
Yeah.
And so we can't wait.
And this pace has changed in the last year of our lives. Right. It's overwhelming, right? Just the speed at which we can.
Personally, I kind of love the pace. And
Yeah,
speed,
yeah. Well, that's yeah. We both are a little.
That's maybe a Matt problem.
Yeah. We're both a little ADHD in that respect, right? Where it's like you could obsess about 5 different things and do them all well, but you now can do those 5 things more effectively because you can have things operating on the side, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to multitask because you've got a model that's running a skill on this side while you're doing something else. So it actually compounds your ability to do all the things that your brain's thinking of.
Exactly. It allows you to do more than you could do on your own.
Yeah.
And I think that's the cool part of the world we're living in is like we have so much greater like power and like things that we can do at the same time. It's fantastic. However, it's like you do getting back to like the first principles, like your data's got to be your infrastructure.
Yeah. So that's a great paper
like,
to read. It's certainly really interesting. And again, I think it is fueling the shift away from SaaS monolithic platforms where there's a lot of data movement and things are kind of siloed within these platforms. It's been a problem with marketers that have more platforms they can count. And this whole move towards composability. It's like, I've got these 2 use cases. I don't need to buy the kit and caboodle of all the things your software does. Can you sell me those 2 use cases and plug into my data infrastructure?
Yeah.
Right. There's been the promise of that, but I think we're really starting to see that come to fruition, at least in the early innings.
I think we're in the early innings of that. I mean, one kind of sidebar I would say is I think you and Rio need to do the Brett and Rio kind of book club at some point. It sounds like you have a whole litany of articles that everybody should read.
Yes, no, that's a good point.
So,
Share the stuff that we're learning from.
I think
right?
that's
people like you. I'm learning from you. We're learning from everybody we talk to.
I think you guys should do a podcast just on your reading list. That'd be an interesting bit. But back to the topic here on speed and data and AI. I think it's an interesting moment for us, right? To learn and to get, and we are in the early innings of how this looks and how this operates. I think what's been interesting in the data and AI world has been like the emergence of like the model context protocol or MCPs.
Yep.
Right.
The agent to agent communication.
And what's interesting is that for the first time, at least right now, you don't have vendor lock, right? An MCP is actually, hey,
it's open source.
It's an open source context. And so you're like, all right, this could be a pretty liberating moment.
Yeah.
I worry that gets kind of tightened up and that vendor lock kind of gets
it gives like it's like founder and founder democratization.
It does.
Right. Suddenly all these founders can come up with stuff, but then you start to run into like, hey, just because you've got Claude Code, MCP, and like a Replit account doesn't mean that you're building like battle tested product that's ready for prime time.
So I mean, what's cool about MCPs right now is it does feel like we can be in more of a democratized open market system. I expect some platforms and technology vendors will try to find ways to build vendor lock into it because it just allows them to kind of monetize their infrastructure better. But I still think we're early innings. I don't know the workspace. The thing that I constantly think about in my seat where I sit today is like, I don't know if users will use or our users that plug into Media Radar are going to use any of our UIs.
Yeah. No,
So,
exactly.
Like, I don't know what the new workspace is.
Yeah.
However, I do know that a lot of the information and data we have, we need to plug that into the endpoints of where our users are. So if we're working with a sales rep, how do they quickly get access to some information from us and a Slack thread,
Yeah.
or they're
Conversational is usually the talk, right? Oh, it's going to
Yeah.
go to conversational insights, instant impact, right? It's like sort of an LMM that's built on a data set, right?
But I do think it's going to be more distributed than it is today. I don't know if we know the form factor. I still feel like mobile is a pretty predominant form factor.
Yeah.
But when the internet came out, we all were using laptops and desktops.
Yeah.
I don't think we all thought we'd be using mobile phones.
Yeah, and now I'm communicating with my Hermes agent with WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Which is a fascinating. It's tied to my entire sort of data background, right?
Yeah, I use Telegram, WhatsApp.
Yeah, Telegram. Well, yeah, I was suggested, but yeah, you either one way or the other.
It all works. But I think that's an interesting space for us to watch. Is like, how does the workspace of a media planner or a media trader change? How does the workspace of an ad sales rep change? How does the workspace of a brand marketer change? And does this data flow into that workspace where they're at, versus I have to go log into 15 different platforms. Let me go log into Salesforce and HubSpot and Gong and whatever 15 other solutions that are out there.
Yeah,
into like Nielsen's.
It's fragmented data. It's fragmented decisioning. You can't get simple synthesized answers to questions you might have.
The point that I want to make there is that the data shouldn't be fragmented. It's the software UI interfaces that are driving the fragmentation.
Yeah,
like
you're putting a wrapper around a data set that you have, and that's walled off from other platforms.
Correct. Yeah. So the biggest walled gardens out there aren't actually Meta, Google. They're actually all the data vendors, because like they're putting bridges and gates and fences up around everybody's little data mode.
Yeah.
And then as you think about like Scott's problem he's trying to solve on trust, it's like, well, it's hard to trust when I don't know what's behind that fence. And I don't know what's over there. And like, what am I getting?
Yeah,
How was the sausage actually made? It's not that anybody has any ill intent. It's just transparency and the lack of trust that exists out there, and the walls that all these data vendors have put up.
Yeah, this is an awesome conversation. We could go on for hours.
I'm pretty sure we're working on a long format.
Yeah, and I think I'm 8 minutes late for our next one. But thanks, Matt. Thanks for sticking around. It's this was a great conversation and always a pleasure. You're a great guy, and thanks for being on the pod.
My pleasure.
We've got a special guest. We've got Matthew Roche, who's the founder and CEO of ID5. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. This is one of the interviews we're really excited for and looking forward to. That's for sure. We do a lot of work like talking about data, identity, AI, ad tech here at Signal and Noise. And as usual, there's pas de blah blah or moins de blah blah for Signal and Noise. So like we focus
no blah blah with me.
Very little blah blah. So that's your reputation anyway. So welcome. Great to have you.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here and happy to be able to cut through the noise.
Absolutely.
Focus on the signal.
Focus as much signal as possible,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Plus to signal and one to blah, blah.
Yes.
So maybe start out, maybe tell the guests a little bit about your company. I mean, I think most of our viewers are like founders, ad tech, pretty senior, but not everyone probably knows about it. So maybe spend 30 seconds on that. That'd be awesome.
So ID5 is an 8-year-old identity company now. Our job is to make advertising addressable and measurable, right? Which is pretty important if you want to, be able to help brand understand who they're talking to and what the return on their advertising investment is. And we do that by partnering with pretty much, any publisher, media owner out there, websites, app developers, TV channels, OEMs, audio providers as well, to make their inventory addressable, and then work with their technology partners, SSPs, DSPs, DMPs, agency partners, brand partners, to make sure they can recognize the customers they're going to talk to, and then they can understand what happens after they've talked to their customers. And so that's the addressability measurement kind of capability that we provide to the industry. As I said, we're 8-year-olds. We are a pretty global operation, even though we only have like just under 100 people. But work a lot in North America, work a lot in Europe, in parts of Asia and Latin America as well. And we've been fortunate to kind of build a capability and a service that has really resonated with the market. Identity is a bit of a kind of a part of the underbelly of the industry, right? It's not the fancy thing that people like talking about, like AI or creative or whatever. Yeah. But it is indispensable to what we do in digital advertising. And I think cookieless saga with Google, now the LiveRamp acquisition, right? All of those things help identity kind of pop up to the surface.
Yeah.
and make our world sexy again. So this week has been pretty active with those discussions.
I was going to say, I was at your talk, I think yesterday morning. This week is such a blur, honestly, but pretty sure it was yesterday.
Yep.
And you did a session with a lot of industry leaders and publishers. And having worked in publishing in this space for quite some time, it seems like you guys started 8 years ago, but the philosophy by which the company runs and the positioning you have, the neutrality positioning, it feels like that is just becoming sexy, in your words, or fashionable or important. And I guess what I wanted to understand from you is, did you always see that coming, or have you been trying to flog a dead horse for so long, and now you're like, finally, everyone's understanding?
Hindsight 2020. I think if you take my pitch deck from 2017, where we started to talk about 95, not much has changed, right? I think the world around us has changed massively, but I'm stubborn like that, and we've been like focused on the notion that identity is not a feature; it's an enabler, right? It's not something that people buy; it's something that people need to have for the services they buy, whether it's engaging with their customers, measuring the campaign performance of the campaign, all of that need identity to work. So it's kind of an infrastructure component, and for infrastructure to work, it needs to be scaled, it needs to be neutral, it needs to be used by everybody.
You put out a really interesting, I call it a framework, right? The other day that I saw it on LinkedIn, but I'm sure you posted on other channels too, where it was showing difference between an identity spine, an identity graph, ID resolution. Love if you can maybe spend a second on that, because I thought that was really interesting. Because a lot of people they hear identity, I don't think they really know what it means.
Yeah, and that is the pain of my existence. It's like this lack of education, lack of interest, right? I don't know. Something is just not clicking with the and maybe we're just not a mass market kind of topic, but
maybe it's just confusing.
And it is confusing and it is complicated.
People
it is
are not into weeds
right?
about tech.
Absolutely. Like it's a lot of people kind of there's a ton of metaphors, but a lot of people take planes and go from A to B. They don't know how the plane engine works, but it is important that it works for people to go. They're only interested in going from A to B, right? There's a lot of technicalities underpinning that ability to go from A to B. Identity is one of those underpinnings that make digital advertising work. And there's a lot of components, but if you take like the 30,000 feet view, it's all about connecting data to devices, to users when they are at the time of being addressed with an ad, right? And so data sits on servers, it sits in CRM databases, it sits in taxonomies of those are the audiences I want to talk to, right? And then they're qualified by their interests, their demographics, their purchase intent, their past relationship with your brand. That is usually like a static set of information, right? And you want to connect that static set of information with the moment in time when someone is on their phone ready to see an ad, or it's the ad break during the game, or it's like the moment where they're receptive to be exposed and to be engaged by your brand. This is not static. This is very dynamic. And so the goal, what we do in identity is connecting offline data to online advertising opportunities, right? And that takes a lot of resolution, a lot of matching, a lot of ID, distribution, connectivity. All of that is the enabler of that connection between offline data and online advertising.
And look, I mean, the airplane engine analogy is a good one, because I think every publisher, content owner I've ever met that's tried to build anything like this themselves has very quickly come back around and gone, "Oh, okay, that's bloody hard."
It is very hard. I think where the metaphor breaks is that there is a very strong network effect. Like you get better at building an operating engine. The more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah.
The more people use ID5, the better ID5 gets for all of our customers. And there's another, and I'm full of analogies. There is another analogy around the currency, right?
Okay.
Or a common language, right?
Yeah.
When you're the only one carrying, francs in your pocket, nobody really cares about it, right? And the value of the franc, if nobody else is able to take it as a trading currency, is very low. But the minute there's a second person that you can trade with, then that currency becomes valuable. If everybody uses euros or dollars, all of a sudden it becomes a currency that everybody can use. And so there is an element of scalability. There is a huge network effect to what we do, and that's where it is very difficult for any single publisher to say, "Oh, I'm going to build my own ID."
Yeah.
Because how do you make sure there is that network effect? How do you make sure it is a currency known by everybody? Some can, right? Google and Facebook, they have their own framework for recognizing users, and it's theirs, and like they're so powerful that they can impose it on others, right? people like Walmart know a lot about customers, Amazon, et cetera, but it's short of those like 5, 6 companies, then everyone else then has to rally around existing currencies. That's what made LiveRamp so successful. They've been this kind of rallying currency, rallying data operating platform. But for this kind of central operating layer to work, neutrality, strategic alignment is really important, and that's where what happened last month with the acquisition by Publicis becomes an interesting.
Yeah, LiveRamp certainly. I know they touted themselves as the Switzerland of identity, and that's certainly, let's say, at the very least, in question. I'd love to dig into that in a second. Maybe before we go there, the future of identity. I know that the future of things get a little banal and annoying sometimes, but I think this is like I'd love to hear your take on this. So like identity has been really the foundation of a lot of digital advertising. Totally agree with you, right? And you look at it, DSPs prioritize traffic, bids with ID attached, because that's how they frequency cap. Yep. That's how they personalize. That's how they ultimately measure too. But knowing there's a lot of rich signal on New York publishers, a lot of rich supply side signal that's never made it into bid stream, right? It's never been able to. It's not been possible if you're going to have transact in 2 milliseconds, right? There's no way you can pull in all the contextual and the other signal. So I know there's been a lot of talk of maybe ID, I'm not saying being less important, but other things becoming more important. Where do you see the role of ID? How do you see it evolving given that?
There's a lot to unpack in that
given
question.
that like you're having like signals put into like LLMs, like what Chalice does, like what we're seeing like Permutive do with like building out a marketplace for that.
So and there's different things I'd like to touch on here, right? One is there's a lot of signal that make advertising important. I think as an industry, we've over-indexed on data, and so identity has become the critical conduit of that value. And we've under-indexed on context, quality of engagement, ad environment, right? And so that's been detrimental to publishers. It's always been a good idea to advertise to the right person, but it's an even better idea to advertise to the right person in the right moment, in the right context. And we've kind of forgotten about those other things. And so we need to rebalance it. It doesn't mean identity becomes useless, because it's still better to advertise to the right person. But if you're in the right time, in the right place, it's even better. And so we should rebalance that a little bit. But the thing is, identity is not just about ad targeting. You could eventually, you can distribute advertising without targeting. You're going to reach everybody, and there'll be a lot of wastage, but you can do it. What you cannot do otherwise, however, is measurement. Yeah. And that's where, like, when you think about the future of identity, we've been like narrow-minded, super focused on make identity work for targeting. We've forgotten that if you don't measure, the fact that you target doesn't really matter because you don't know. So right. True. And so we need and I had this discussion, like on another podcast 30 minutes ago with Tony Katzer from the Tech Lab. We need to make sure advertising can be measured. Yeah. If it's not measured, it doesn't matter. And so the measurement discussion is really what we need to put to the forefront. And that's where, the new lack of independence of LiveRamp becomes an issue, because if you measure without being an independent operator in the middle, it is it's challenging for a lot of people to kind of trust or support your measurement logic.
I know we have a few minutes left, so I won't try and make this hard, but to try and thread a couple of things together. You've talked about ID as a currency in that kind of concept. Cloudflare reckon for the first time there are more agents browsing web than humans. What does that mean to ID as currency?
Yeah, that's a super interesting discussion, a very underexplored topic here. But I think we actually, Adify, put out a white paper a couple of months ago about what agentic or let's say AI in general changes in terms of consumer journey, purchase of funnel for consumers, and how from an identity standpoint, we need to take that into consideration. You've got situations now where someone is being exposed to an ad, interacts with advertising, and then orders Claude to go and book a flight ticket, right? And so human exposure, agentic conversion, or vice versa. You've got agentic awareness, right? Like you ask your LLM of choice, hey, what is the best airline for me to go to Cannes in June because I need to go to the festival, right? And the airline is going to tell you, well, Delta is very expensive, but maybe you can fly to Frankfurt or whatever. So that consideration, that brand awareness is going to come from agentic interaction, but then a human is going to book the ticket, right? So agentic advertising human conversion, or vice versa. Human advertising, agentic conversion.
We're looking at an ID graph, though. The content is going to have to change because you have to have agents associated with individuals as well, too, right?
We've been working on cross-device graph, and so connecting the different devices at a user and a household level. But we've made, for the past 20 years, we've made a great job at excluding bots from those discussions. We don't
That
want
has
to
to
count.
reverse now.
We don't want to count bot traffic. We don't want to advertise to bots. Well, now we can do. Now we can do, right? So we need to bring it back into the fold, and we need to understand it's not about a cross-device graph. It becomes a cross-persona graph that includes not only me as a person and the different devices that I'm using, but also my agents, the agents that represent me in advertising and in conversion.
There'll have to be metadata on the agents to identify who they are, who they're representing. At some point, I mean, there's going to have to be, right? Or you can do the stitching, but
listen,
it would make it easier if people
if I had the solution, I don't think this is something that ID5 is going to crack on their own. I just want to raise the level of awareness of this, because this is a systemic change. We need to think about identity at a different level now, because agents have to be part of that conversation. Otherwise, we're going to create silos. And Brian are going to see, like, when I advertise to a human and a human convert, this is how it performs. I advertise to an agent confirms it. But like, there is no crossover, which is not the true world that we live in
anymore. But agents will be representing us and doing things for us, whether regardless of what you think agentic commerce, how like it's going to be something. So like they're going to be out there, they're going to be doing things, and you're right, they are doing things. They already are. I agree. And then before I pass to Krish, like you mentioned LiveRamp a couple times. I mean, obviously, it would be remiss not to bring it up, right? And we have to. So, like, thoughts on that? And I imagine you're having a lot of conversations as a result of that. What do you perk coming out of it?
Super smart acquisition by Publicis. Great company, great position they've built. However, I think their acquisition is going to create a lot of issues for a lot of other brands or agencies for which their independence and neutrality is strategic. And so we're seeing a lot of conversation about ways to rebuild the capabilities that LiveRamp has built and the services they've provided with other bits and pieces. We are involved in a lot of those conversations because the LiveRamp stack relies a lot on the Ramp ID. The best alternative to the Ramp ID is the ID5 ID, so we can be a part of that reconstruction effort. But again, they've built a great business and they've been very successful. It's not going to be a quick replacement. However, it feels like it's going to be a significant process over the next maybe 6 to 12 months to rebuild those capabilities with the existing kind of, providers in the ecosystem, because that acquisition creates a strategic challenge for a lot of operators in our space.
Yeah, I think that kind of comes back to as well the philosophy of how people think they run their business and how they run it. It's the bit under the hood of the plane engine never felt more important than it does now to actually look under and see what's in there.
Listen, advertising is sexy. Identity is sexy again.
It is. And look, on that, we'll wind down there. I think it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Matthew. I've been wanting to chat to you for a while, so glad to do that.
Glad to do it. Thank you, guys.
Pod of blah blah is our tagline for Supercamp. And this is one of the conversations I was most excited about. Smoltzy Gordmar, who's the global president at Omnicom Media, focused on health, right?
That's correct.
And so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So I love it. Maybe take a minute or two, talk about kind of current role, like how long you've been doing that, like how you got into health and care marketing. That's a cool thing that, and frankly, and this is something we need to talk about here too, I think it's been historically underrepresented at CAM.
I absolutely agree. And I absolutely believe that has changed so much in the past few years. I can start with your first question. So what I got and how I got into healthcare, I started my career in healthcare. I left, it's over 25 years ago. And I've spent about 90% of it in healthcare. And every time I get pulled into something else, which is also fun to learn, get exposed to new things, but they keep bringing me back.
They say Goodfellas every time I
get out, they pull me right back in. It's true. And I have never been more energized and excited to work in healthcare than I do.
Were you client side initially or were you always agency?
No, I have always been agency side.
I've never been client side either.
Yeah, I don't even know what that feels like. Some people say it feels good. Got a lot of clients that are stealing my people and bringing them over there. So
that happens,
yeah, all the time. And it happens even more in healthcare. But I'm glad it means we've done something right.
We brought good people.
We brought good people, talent, thinking, strategy, enough for them to want to take that from us. And when we're lucky enough, we get to continue to work with them.
More from it now.
I know. But I've been in this role actually since the acquisition. But prior to that, I was the global president of Omnicom Media Media Brand, IPG Media Brands Health, now Omnicom Media Health. I'm still learning all the new words, but more importantly, my role is about bringing together the healthcare community within the media part of our organization, leading all of our health clients, ensuring that they have what they need to succeed, driving best practices, processes, tool creation, solutions, talent, thought leadership, and all that good stuff.
Not a
So
lot of things.
I'm never busy. So it's just, yeah. I laugh. And then when people ask me what I do, and then I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, I do a lot of things, but that's okay. I love meeting people. I love having interesting conversations, and it always kind of sparks something in me, especially coming here to Kian.
Well, it's great to have you here. I mean, it's funny too. We're in full transparency. We are officially colleagues now. So I work at Creator, which is the transformation consultancy part of Omnicom. So I guess as of when, like December, we're colleagues, right?
Yeah, when it's like, I think it was the last week of November, right before Thanksgiving. Literally, it was like Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, welcome to the Rebel Alliance with the Death Star.
The Rebel Alliance, the Death Star. Yes,
I don't know which side, but good, great to be working together.
absolutely.
So love it if like the thread we were talking about in the beginning about healthcare historically. I mean, you go here CPG every year, right? It's like
And technology.
technology and sports and all that. Like that's all that's super well represented here, right? And tech as well. But like, I just think historically, when you look at the amount of money spent on marketing in healthcare, which is pharma's always right up there.
It's billions and billions and billions.
So, like, some pharma brands spend billions each on media. People don't realize that. Like, despite this incredible spend, very few pharma I think marketing leaders from healthcare seem to be historically represented here. Like, why is that? And is that changing?
I think as people have always been quite cautious when it comes to pharma, and there is a lot of regulatory that surrounds us, as well as clients even coming and being here. But I would say over the past few years, I have seen exponentially more agencies representing, not just within presence on the corset, but the awards themselves. And Kian has opened that up to healthcare awards. And that too then brings the invitation for more people to be here. I will say that I'm grateful every time that I come here. I'm exhausted, but I'm grateful because I do find there are pockets of healthcare conversations that are not taking place anywhere else. I guess there's something about the space, the place, the weather, the time zone, where you get to actually have more thoughtful conversations about how we reach patients and physicians, and in a more creative and boundless way.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that about Can. Actually, when people ask me a lot of times, I do a lot of conferences now for a long time. We'll always ask people, which one should I go to?
Yeah.
And Can's obviously the most expensive. It's not easy to get here.
Nope. And it's hot.
And it's like, yeah, it's 90 plus degrees. You're running around 30,000, 20,000 steps a day. It's a lot. But I tell people, if you're going to go to one conference, this would be the one because of what you just mentioned.
I agree.
Part of it, I think you're in like a foreign country with a lot of Americans, it's like this level of relaxation people have. It's like to your point, you get incredible conversations with people that you might not have the chance to sit down with, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's a time zone thing too, because even when you're traveling at conferences, going jet lag, but it's, you're up before everybody else. So you don't feel like you're being pulled in multiple directions. Because right now I'm like on my walk over, my husband and my daughter called because they were on the way to school. So it's a totally,
I just kept that culture.
Right, exactly. It's a totally different mindset and even just physical experience.
Another point you made too, I thought was interesting about, like you brought up both patients and physicians. I think historically, like pharma marketing's been, I mean, I know DTC was even banned until like around 2000, right?
Yeah, it was about 2000.
And then it became possible. And like DTC is mostly those, generic kind of things you see during a Super Bowl.
Well, DTC is branded direct to consumer advertising. So anything from a specific drug or even some disease state education, but it is that long format for the most part because we have to share all of the fair balance. Where you hear and learn about a product, a key therapeutic area, and then some of the side effects.
But I think historically, besides that, which is one format, like the rest of like whenever I've worked, I've done like consulting work within let's say biotech, medical equipment, medical devices within my sciences, right? It's always been the customer's always been a healthcare professional, like HCP, right? And that could be any different people. That could be a nurse practitioner, that could be an office manager.
Absolutely. Right? Before you even get to the physician, the pharmacist, you name it.
And looking at all these stakeholders, like how, like, and then I think HIPAA was always used, like when we used to joke, it's an excuse to like not do a lot of things. So like wonder, do you think that's changing? Do you think that's true? And like, what are you seeing that's like actually getting you excited? That's like maybe a little different, like because of new technologies or maybe just changing perceptions and practices in the industry?
I love that there's a greater openness to actually infusing additional non-healthcare experience into everything that we do. I've said for many years that we have to be even more strategic and more creative than people that work outside of healthcare, because for us to get something accomplished, it takes a heavier lift and more time. I actually think that there's just, tremendous, boundless opportunity for creation in a way never before. And patients and physicians have more choice than they ever have. And I think that is.
I like that point a lot. It's funny too. I remember when I first started working in pharma, and I was warned by some of the partners when I was young in my consulting career. I remember some of the VPs who'd been in pharma forever. They were, don't bring up other industries. If they're asking for best practices, don't bring it up. You'll get left out of the room. I think that's changed.
Oh my God. Absolutely. It's changed. I think if anything, we welcome it. As I said, we have to think a little differently and more strategically. But no, I want to surround myself with smart people. It doesn't matter where they work or what they do. If anything, I think it limits you if it's diversity of thought, diversity of experience that helps us and challenges us to move forward.
How are your strategies that you're advising clients on changing? Because you look at the way people are consuming content, right? And I had this great conversation with Hearst actually at Possible. We were talking about how people aren't reading as many books, they're still not reading as many magazines. They might spend hours on reels or looking at shorts on TikTok, vertical content. And my point was, the same people will also listen to a 3-hour podcast, right? Absolutely. Right. But our long-form podcasts oftentimes do better than the short ones, right? So I just think what that shows is that it's not like certain contents works better. It's not like certain contents work better naturally than others, but I think the way people consume content is changing, evolving.
It's true. And I mean, you could be listening to a podcast, but doing 3 other things at the same time.
Usually the case, yeah.
Right. I think people are consuming more content than ever. I mean, there is just more content to be consumed, but more content than ever, and new in different ways at different times. Because it comes back to the concept of choice. There just is so much of it. In my mind, we have to figure out what that, at least in the healthcare world, what the right content to share is at that point in time in a patient or physician's journey to ensure that it's most meaningful. Because if we get it wrong, it's bad. And we never want consumers, patients, physicians to have a negative experience. So we have to be even more sensitive. But we have to figure out and are continuing to push for ways to create content that is short form, content that is long form. So it's basically a choose your own adventure when it comes to something you're interested in, and then surrounding that with something that sounds relevant and unintrusive and can spark some good conversation.
So I think stuff's changing in healthcare. I mean, it's just always changing, right? But healthcare, I think, is and I would advise people who think, it's a regulated industry, not interesting, totally the opposite, right?
Absolutely.
I think there's so much cool stuff going on. So there's some trends that get called out a lot, whether it's, the personalized medicine or consolidation of healthcare or change in reimbursements. What are some of the trends you're seeing that are really impacting your clients in the biggest way?
Well, it's funny because I love that everyone continues to talk about AI, but in different ways than they have in the past. I think, and I literally have to say thank you to Scott Galloway. He's amazing. But I was lucky enough to attend an offsite where he spoke, and he specifically said that healthcare is the industry that is most ripe for disruption from AI. And I couldn't agree more. because the entire healthcare system, drug development, approval, everything is so cumbersome that the faster you can adopt technology to help support us to move quicker with purpose, the more we can actually help people and it becomes easier, right?
It's a really interesting point. I remember I saw this chart not long ago where it was showing like the change in prices over time. And it had like anything that, televisions prices went down over time, and cars prices went down, like everything except education, housing, and healthcare all skyrocketed up. And those are all heavily regulated.
It's true. And you know what? It shouldn't be that way. I'm hopeful that technology will allow us to democratize healthcare in a new way, where we feel more empowered and more knowledgeable about how and when we can do things for ourselves. The ability to aggregate our healthcare information, our records, our conversations, our physicians, our insurance is now closer than ever. And I'm just hopeful that we'll have a far better experience. Also just being a patient as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I joke, I'm like hair club for men. I'm not just a president, I'm a patient too, because I have Crohn's. I talk about it all the time. And I'm so grateful that I was diagnosed.
I could join you.
You don't need it, you're fabulous, just as you are. But
apparently there are new pharmaceutical drugs coming out that are quite effective. So
there's so many things coming out.
I am very excited.
Great. But I was diagnosed only, like 6 years ago.
Okay.
So in the middle of COVID and needing to advocate for myself. And then
COVID, that must have been like incredibly challenging.
It was so insane. I was actually hospitalized.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm like, not good. I'm all right. And I laughed because I got in there and I thought I had a sinus infection, but I had RSV, and thank goodness for that because I was able to get my own hospital room. But my family had to come in with hazmat suits.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's insane. I'm like, did that really happen?
It is insane to live through that.
And to be in a hospital, it was just crazy. But nonetheless, coming out of that and how I get treated and who I speak to and how often I need to speak to them, and am I getting the right answers, or do I feel good on therapy? As I said, I feel grateful to ask for a patient support program, a patient savings program, all the different things. It's really hard. And as I said, for a lay person who doesn't work and live in healthcare, I was very grateful that I knew how to advocate for myself.
It's interesting that you need to advocate. I think a lot of people forget about that. But I think people also don't realize how incredible science and medicine is. So like my father had ulcerative colitis. Actually he had surgery back in the 60s, right? I mean, he almost
colostomy, all the stuff, yeah.
Both my brothers had it too, but one of them just takes medication, he's fine.
Yeah.
It's treated, and the other ended up having a different surgery where he's totally fine. Doesn't need it. It's
amazing.
My father said this surgery would never imagine this 30 years ago. And the fact that my brother lives a normal life, he's able to go through this. It's really incredible, the breakthroughs that are happening. They're happening all the time now. So I think a lot of people who are not in the industry don't realize how quickly things are changing.
And I think anything that allows the system to move faster, and even as I said, like the drug approval process, the clinical recruitment process, it also can drive better outcomes faster. And product development and new therapy development is happening at a speed that is unprecedented, which is incredible. When you think about the research and how quickly some of the categories are studying, like GLP-1s, but now
totally new thing, right?
It's a new thing. Just a few years ago, it's billions and billions, almost of billions of dollars. But the things that they're finding that this drug can help with are incredible.
Smoking cessation.
I know, it's addiction. I was reading something. One of my best friends has Parkinson's, and I was reading something about the possibility of GLP-1s helping for Parkinson's. Like, who could have believed that?
That's wild.
Yeah.
But I read something the other day about one of the vaccines, the Shields vaccine, actually prevented dementia. I mean, that's
Bring it on.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I had my Shields vaccine, so maybe
I haven't had my shingles.
it's not fun to see the other two. So.
Good to know.
I see we're running out of time here. I know you've got to run to your next meeting. This is so
Yeah.
cool having you stop by.
Thank you for
spend some
having
time
me.
and tell our viewers a little bit about what you're doing and some of the cool things. I'd love to, if you're interested in the future, I'd be on for a long form podcast.
I would love it.
Super fun.
I would love it.
Really, like we love that. Like I said, pot of blah, one to blah blah, or pot of blah blah. Like to dig into the weeds and get you cool topics to fun people. So thanks again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Said I got two incredible leaders here. So I've got Lisa Ryan Howard, who's the Global Chief Revenue Officer, Hearst Magazine. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. And I just have to say, you guys have been great partners in this. We are really excited to have you hosting the podcast here at Hearst House at Cannes.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. And we also have her colleague, Mike Mizzo, who's the...
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and equally thrilled to be, right in the middle of this beautiful sign that sits behind us. So I feel privileged to be in the middle.
Yes, we have a sign. We've got great lighting. It's been thank you, by the way. It's collaboration.
We're professionals.
It shows. And we try to be precious to a single noise, but this has been wonderful. Thank you. So I guess my first question, Lisa, is for you as a global CRO. The last 20, 25 years, I know that globally the publishing business is actually around half the size it was 25 years ago. It's because of all of these forces that have really impacted the industry. Let's launch classified ads for from newspapers. The rise of the walled gardens siphoned off a lot of revenue where they use your content, frankly, and then pull people on Facebook. Instead of sending it back to your websites, you can monetize them. It's been like a challenging couple of decades, but I actually think with some of the things that are going on here, it's a time of potentially for optimism for publishers. Love your thoughts on that.
I 100% agree. It has been an evolution over the last couple of decades. And I think the last maybe 5-10 years were very much about scale, chasing scale. And, I think the publishing industry did consolidate as a result of that when the social platforms kind of cut off the valve there. And so I think we're in an exciting phase now because what it's about is our own deep relationship with our audiences. It's about connecting with readers wherever they want to meet us, whether that's on social platforms, whether that's on YouTube, whether that's on our websites, whether it's through events. There's so many avenues for us to connect with people today that it presents opportunity for publishers. I also just think that publishing right now, and we're hearing it from our partners, there is this kind of desire with the noise that is out there in the marketplace. There is just content everywhere. And a lot of it is irresponsible. And people are looking for the standout. They're looking for quality. And so we're in a place now where I think partners are coming to us and saying, it's almost like a rebirth. They're like, you guys have never been more valuable because we need you in this very noisy ecosystem. And so we're protecting our relationship with our audiences, and we're protecting our relationship with our partners by being super high quality.
You mentioned noise, like turning maybe to the signal on the data side. Like what data products or solutions have you been creating that in order to solutions for your sales?
We spent the last couple of years really shoring up the data foundation, right? The last decade was a rush to hoard data. I think in the last few years, it's been how do you better understand that data? How do you partition that data?
But just the host involved in that, I imagine, on that.
Of course.
Yeah. Jess, she's a friend of the pod, by the way.
Yeah. She's been a tremendous help with some of the work that she and the corporate team are doing. Has absolutely percolated into the work that we've been producing here and the products that we're bringing to market. And so the sum of the parts is definitely greater than the whole here at Hearst. But that being said, the products that we are bringing to market, and kind of a nice parlay in that, is they're not one-dimensional. They're actually multidimensional. We started, I think, if we were to bring that into the conversation, was really just following a signal around there. The publishers sat on, to Lisa's point, a treasure trove of data around content. And that content was actually a relationship. People were coming to us, they were craving our content. And when they showed up and engaged our platform, we were able to understand that they were consuming different types of content that made them multidimensional humans. And as we started to see that, we were able to wrap behavioral, contextual, and predictive AI into a single package. And that was our foray into kind of this signal agnostic, cookieless future that the industry was craving at that time. And I think the journey continues. I don't think we're finished. And I think anyone who says they are, they're lying to you.
So it's a process more than a destination at this point.
It is. But I think we started contemplating this maybe a year and a half ago. But I think that the speed at which it has accelerated in the past 6 months has been exponentially faster. And our ability to now make platforms out of tools is incredible. And what we're doing in Suite is really going to be changing the game, especially in the insights space, the RFP space, and how we can kind of consolidate that into one process.
So looking at like as CRO, like, that Hearst has made a big focus on direct sort deal space to take some of that red signal, to take those data solutions and how those are being like thought of or packaged up assets for your advertisers.
Of course. I mean, and you're right. Yes. So the majority of our business is direct, which is not typical of every publisher.
There's more than 50% is direct.
Yes.
Okay.
And, we are in a place now where I think because of the noise in the ecosystem, brands, advertisers, agency partners are coming to us because they want to break through. And what breaking through looks like now is like starting with an idea and then using the signal and the data to inform that recommendation, the idea, and then surround sounding it with literally. You could start with a creative idea and then you talk about how you're going to maybe, let's say it's an event, right? You're going to create content around that event and then you're going to distribute that content, right? On our platforms, on social, you're going to surround sound that moment. You're going to help that client break through and you're going to layer then the signal and the relevant targeting over it because you deeply understand what both the marketer is looking for and what our audience wants contextually. So taking that moment, helping an advertiser break through. And I think that's more important than ever right now because it's just incredibly hard to be heard as a marketer in this moment.
That's a good point. There's so much content out there. I finally heard this term the other day, AI swap cannon, which is if you combine AI, which is it's very easy for you. The effort it takes to create content is reduced, right? And you combine that with lack of judgment, you get the AI swap gap. Looking at the ad sales process, I mean, it sounds like you're using AI or this work product quite a bit in order to support that. I heard some of the RFP support. What are some of the things you're doing? Because that's always been having worked on both buy and sell of advertising. It's giving it always helps to give the ad sales team better tools and better products, right? So I'd love to hear what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of the ad buying process has already been commoditized in some way, shape, or form, whether that's programmatic or now agentic buying, as we said. We're doing is something different. For what Asa was saying, with all of our brands and the people who come to us, the one thing AI can't replicate is the signal that sits underneath the tools that we have. And that signal is what allows us to actually build with confidence the tools that we're bringing to marketing. So to be more specific, the Aura IQ platform actually sits on our content board. And so we've embedded our content, vectorized it, and married it to all of our trending. And that gives us real-time insights and allows us to understand how people move through content ecosystems. And you're actually being able to then ingest an RFP, embed that, vectorize it, understand deeply what's the content.
So advertiser sends it over, Hearst Magazine gets it, you just put it into Aura.
That's what we upload the RFP. And within 4 minutes, you get 2 things that are unique. One is insights. So as Lisa said, now you have the idea, but the advertiser had the idea, the agency had the idea, and you can use the data to ground and surround it. And I think that's the job of the data. We don't want the data to derive the ideas. We wanted the data to actually say, yes, we can accomplish this on your behalf. And the second piece is if and when we say, yes, that is the ground and surround, you can press another button. And almost immediately you have an audience that's built in real time that's bespoke to that RFP. And so we're moving away from just selling scale. I think that's the one thing that we've done really well is, hey, we have contextual scale. And now we're saying we have precision scale and it's tailored to you advertiser and your.
Some of the content, I mean, you have these iconic magazine brands and some way people consume content is definitely changed. I wouldn't say that there's a certain content people like or don't like, but it's more like people will spend all this time on TikTok, like looking at these shorts and reels, yet they'll spend hours on podcasts. So I just think we're in a time of flux, right? Like what are some trends you're seeing and like what are some things Hearst doing that in this space it's worth?
2 things. So what we were kind of talking about was high value audiences, right? And locating them. That was like part 1. Part 2 of our strategy is unlocking creativity. And it's through things like platform native, partnerships. So creating a ton of content for YouTube, for example, or for social first. And what we've learned in talking with YouTube as we've built out this strategy is that because more video, particularly with YouTube, is on a CTV than even on your, whereas 2 years ago, they were advising all of content creators, oh, super short form, less than 2 minutes. Now they're advising us more than 10 minutes.
YouTube is TV.
Exactly.
That's what we call it, YouTube TV.
And that presents a huge opportunity for us. So we have a bunch of shows that are already in the can and on the air. And then we have other shows that are in development now that are catered to those formats. And I'll say one that we did with Esquire is really interesting because this is kind of a subset of how we are unlocking creativity and what the role is of premium brands like ours that have been around for decades. So let's use Esquire. Michael Sebastian, who's the Pulitzer Prize winning editor of Esquire, editor-in-chief, started his own podcast, his own vodcast.
He's great.
He's fantastic. He was here yesterday. I'm glad you think so too. Thank you. He's a real talent and he's putting himself out there, and our editors more and more are doing that. They're going in front of the camera. They are writing their own personal stories and recommendations and newsletters. They are putting themselves out there, and he does it through a show called What I've Learned. And we've got fascinating learnings from that. Just in the I think we've probably done 10 episodes. One of the more recent ones, we did kind of an analysis across all the platforms of viewing, and he had with that one 50 million podcasts. It was actually on Spotify. It was a vodcast, as I mentioned, 50 million views. And when you look at the rankings, it's outstanding. Really and this is a new opportunity for us, right? And so we're monetizing that now in really creative ways with partners. So we're saying, okay, branded integrations, product placement, mid rolls, and thinking about how we're surrounding long form content, host reads, things that we didn't even have in our arsenal a couple of years ago.
It exists, right? These are all new things that we experimented with. It is wild. I mean, Becky had so many views, and I think it's cool that someone like that, Hearst magazines, be creating great content with her platform, then using social push out. Interviewed CMO of Florence company. It is one of the CEO. And the CMO was saying, it's funny, he said, the CEO will go and he'll go to LinkedIn and respond to people. And, go to Twitter and go to different platforms, respond to people. And he said he will value the opinions of 3 customers who tell him something on LinkedIn over the CMO. And the CMO said, you know what? I think that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild.
It's putting yourself out there, and, similar to how creators do. One more point on social. It is a meaningful revenue stream for us now. And I'll say that we have new partnerships, not new, but better partnerships with Meta and other platforms we have in the past, because they know when we are publishing and pushing content out on their platforms that the advertising that's surrounding it or the sponsorship of it performs better for the brand. And so they come in and train our teams, and they go out and talk to advertisers about coupling, because it's helping them, again, get out of the noise and stand above and perform better.
How much of that do you think is the fact that the social platforms have grown up, right? I mean, it's not just them, we're starting, they're happy to use content from publishers. It's just as businesses did realize we need publishers, and we should, how much of it is that versus just the fact that I think people's tastes have evolved to content is content. People expect to get it different places, and you're going to spend time different places. I mean, how is that consumer behavior versus just this industry maturity?
I mean, I think, it's about performance, right? That's just the basics. But to your point, they are taking seriously, I hope they're taking seriously, the obligation that they have to have responsible content and high quality content on their platforms, and not make, the social experience a bad experience for young people or users or anyone. And so I think that they want more professional content. And so, publishers are starting to embrace that. Now we have to navigate that, because we want people right in our ecosystem. We want members, we want audiences, we want people signing up for our newsletters. We're not fully distributed, right? And so for us, it's that balance, and it's figuring out where to show up, when, with what content, and how we can monetize that with our partners and help our partners really stand out too.
Yeah, monetization. You mentioned agentic trading earlier. I know it's still early, and I'd love to hear because, the vision is buyer agents and seller agents working together, deals excellent human companies. I'd love to see where you are and what you're able to share about your vision.
Yeah, everything you said is correct, by the way. This is not at scale. I think we're very early days in agentic buying and selling. I think we are chasing the ghost, but we're also chasing it into the right corner of the room, at least, meaning like it probably is the way of the future. We'll roll that. I think if you take a page out of programmatic, some of this playbook has already been, and we are looking at it is the tools that we're building today are built to be modular enough to accept the future. So they're not future proof, but they're future forward. Meaning if an MCP layer is going to exist in agent to agent buying, we built our tools knowing that MCP was going to be that. And so we built it to enable that. So if and when we're ready to open it up, people can come to us and find their audiences through an agent. And then we can connect that to our pitch to pay platform and eventually connect all of this into a seamless workflow. Now, is that ready today? I don't know. And I don't think so because of all of the experiments that I have seen have been tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, maybe $1,000.
That's what we're looking
flowing through the platform. And that's great. Someone's got to kick the tires on this stuff. I think everything that Lisa just said, it is exciting to be at a publisher now. We used to be last and now we're fast. Whether it's, the social stuff, whether it's AI tools, whether it's agentic, you're going to start to see publishers like Hearst.
Just add that we actually have a tangible tool. We announced it exclusively with that week last week. We've gotten a ton of positive press on it because it's tangible and I see it as phase one of this journey. And I think phase two is what you're talking about, which is plugging into the ecosystem at the agency, on the agency side, just ecosystem wide, right? So this is really proprietary to us at this stage. And it is really the front part of the process. It's more qualitative than it is quantitative. I think when you get to the point where you have literally from that RFP ingestion all the way through automation, all the way through to, wrap report and end product, that's probably a 2-year cycle. We're probably in phase one, which is year one, and year two, our objective, we'll see if we get there, but our objective is to connect all the way through such that we have the quantitative side of this nailed too. And we can literally automate with our humans, right? Managing this and controlling this and making sure that, it's accurate and that while it's fast, we're not giving up any of the performance, right? So literally taking it through from front end all the way to the finish is probably 2 years.
I'm staying in it. And I think you're an advantage. I agree with that from your sound too, that Rexel does. And those are going to be the easiest ones to have trading done by agents, right? Because there's a lot of details when it's suggesting it's a simple process, but I think the advantage of this is you have a majority of yours already direct sold. My guess probably grows once you nail this. And I think anyone who says agentic buying some media is not going to happen. They've not been paying attention in the last 25 years. Think about it, like 25 years ago, no one bought stuff online, right? I remember we interviewed someone who was an early employee at Amazon. He was saying how people would call them afraid to, right? It was crazy, right? Or they would email them because they didn't want to, but now that's normal. People do it. Or people either the stuff goes in your shopping cart or you put stuff on that you just reorder. So our behaviors will change as we gain comfort with these things as to how they work. So I think it's an inevitability.
And as soon as behaviors change, the one thing I can tell you about this ecosystem, we've all had it a long time. Tech changes really fast. We're good at throwing more tech at tech, and we will solve the hard problems. And we'll probably solve them relatively quickly at this point. But I agree with you. We've seen this shift happening now, or into a new chapter of it, and we'll learn, I think, a lot from what we've seen the last 25.
So looking at observations of these you've seen that get you excited or have been or that maybe were or weren't expected.
Okay, so first, and this is a little ridiculous, but it's true. We all know that there's a lot of rosé flowing, and there's
about 10 minutes.
Right, exactly. There's just this reputation for this kind of laissez-faire attitude. Every single one of my meetings has been on time this year for the first time, and I have done CAM for many, many years. So I think that there's a reason for that. I think that people are hungry, and now, as opposed to last year, I'm seeing tangible solutions, just like RIQ. That's actually, Mike will demo it for you if you like. It's real. This is a real product. Whereas the last couple of years, we were fumbling through what's this going to look like. I think we know now what it is going to look like, and everybody wants to talk about the solution. So I feel excited about that. I was at a CMO forum this morning, and we're talking about exactly this question. And humans is the word that everyone was talking about. I can't credit myself for this. This is somebody else's insight, but everybody was aligned on it. Humans, brands, right? That's back. And that's something that I think people are excited about because again, it goes to what I was talking about earlier, quality. This is a moment where, because we don't have to chase scale, because it's not just eyeballs and commoditization, we're now in a place where we can be thoughtful and we can actually create meaningful change.
I mean, this resonates, and I think one trend I've seen a lot that definitely validates that is the whole like interactions, and I think they're also valuing interactions like over institutions. The cost like trust in institutions to go down, but trust in people is going up.
100%. And one like data point on that, we're actually expanding our events. This past year, I just did a whole events investment plan for the company. And when all the data was accumulated, it's just in the last 18 months, and we're going to continue. And so, and the demand is there. And it's for exactly what you're saying is IRL. I think it's also because if you think about it, events are that you're creating, right, to help you stand out. And then event is not just an event. There's the walk-up content before it. There's the post content after it. And then there's the amplification of that content. And brands are publishers. Publishers are brands. We all are navigating a lot of the same, dynamics now about trying to break through and connect with audiences. And so brands in this moment are excited to be partnering with publishers on, around this amplification so that they can stand out. And events are part of that.
It's interesting you said that. So we're doing like for ad, we were planning an event that we just wanted to sign it right away. So exactly they said, we want the fact that we can connect with people in real life, be associated thematically with something. It's curated with the right types of people. I mean, there's something about that it seems like there's a thirst for and a realization that is really impactful.
Yeah, it's cultural moments. It's kind of manufactured moments that they're authentic and can resonate. It's what brands want right now.
And just to bring that full circle, like content matters, whether it's on a page or in an experience, like if that's the connective tissue as a publisher, like
I love that point, by the way. You're right. It matters. It matters. Doesn't matter like the meaning.
It doesn't.
It's not about the format.
It is not. It's about, are you interested in this thing? And if you're interested, then you will connect if you have and I think that isn't what makes it exciting here. And to answer your other question, the other thing that I was excited about Cam was to learn and hear about AI, but the number one topic this week, I think, has been the heat. Yeah, I think that's what everyone's been talking about. So
it's 87 degrees and it was 81 yesterday.
Yeah. We're having a reprieve today.
Yeah. I think the suitcase is going to wear twice as much as all the waterlogged clothes. Right. Never dry. It's been, for those who are not in Canada, it's been very hot, very humid and hot. I think Frank's actually set a record. Yes.
On Friday, and everybody's warning me. I think it's supposed to cool off at the weekend, but I think it was like over 100 degrees. They closed the schools today. I was just at a lunch with our Amazon partners, and oh my gosh, they were like, my daughter's at home now because my husband doesn't navigate this because they don't want him in school because it's too hot.
And they haven't never needed air conditioning there. I lived in Paris in the 90s. It was over 75 degrees one day in the summer.
Yeah.
Or t-shirt. Like it was just never got that hot.
San Francisco summers.
Yeah, we kind of want, but that was like the whole house, right? I mean,
we can't complain in Cannes. Like I am not one of the people that is complaining about the heat because it's exciting. There's energy. I'm super psyched to be here. And you know what? It's hotter in other places.
This is true. But I was told, this is my favorite conference. And like if people ask, which conference should I go to? We say, if you're going to go to one, go to Cannes. It's expensive to get there. It's hot and it's like a lot, but like, is everyone you want to talk to there? Like you'll have chances like this, or like even some of the best conversations I've had here where you just random people that you realize you don't know who it is you're talking to sometimes. But it's just this casualness of that in here because, if you're 8 hours ahead, 6 hours ahead of, the email's not blowing up yet for most of the day. You're in another country. There's something about that where you have these intimate experiences and conversations that you really don't get anywhere else.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm thinking a lot about as I, finish or wrap, and because we're over the hump, right? Of our week. I feel like there's one more day and then, we're good. But is this idea that we have to make things as easy as possible in a very, very complicated world, right? So how are we creating solutions like our IQ, like our global offering, easier for people to want to work with us? And whether that's direct or whether that's programmatic, we'll figure all that out. But the reality is that there is so much choice out there. There's so much complexity out there, and we have to build the solutions that are both faster and simpler. And of course, table stakes that they perform. So that's kind of what we're focused on. And I'm excited about this moment. And I think I've never said this, like never been like super psyched at the end of a can because you're exhausted and it's just draining. I'm energized and excited. First time at the end of can over the hump of can.
I'd say the same thing. This is the best can I've had out of 5 that I've been to. This has been fun, exciting. There's energy in the right places. I think that's also the thing. It's like we're finally focused on like what are the things that matter. I think the next foray is going to be like marketer versus machine and what happens in the LLM space. People are already starting to kind of look around the corner and see what's next. And you're going to feel that, I think, going into next year too. It's like we're not just going to leave here and stop. So it's like there's a momentum that's going to carry us into when we all go back to our offices that are successful.
Even how your majority of traffic now is not human traffic. Some of it might be crawlers that are just scraping content, but some of it might be agents that are going out and doing things for people. So like even I was like, that is such a cool concept, right? So like everything's changing, it's changing quicker. And like those conversations are happening here. Just
want to talk about the answer to that?
Yeah, like we're doing some really early beta work in and around that. It's like, how do we understand those machines and their responses and not just citation, but influence? How do we change your ability to show up and how you show up in those answer machines? And, it feels like magic, but it's actually just pencils on paper. We as publishers actually have the provenance to actually influence a lot of that. Our relationships and our early work are showing that there is a path to kind of understanding this 3-dimensionality. Like you're trying to solve for a brand, a product, and a persona at the same time. And Hearst sits uniquely there.
You have all that content. I mean, the content they're using to train the LLMs, the content matters.
I mean, we have an autos portfolio that is pretty dominant with many brands in the auto space. And so just to use that as an example, like car trend truck of the year, and you're an automotive company, how does that influence your ability to show up in citations? These are really interesting experiments that we're doing with partners to see, how the whole thing is working and to see how we can, as you said, influence it. And I think we want to do that. Obviously, it's in authentic ways, but we've got a lot of solutions right now. We're testing. We have, as you said, 5 beta partners that we are in flight with right now, trying to understand this thing. And so it's experiments. It's not like the solution, but it is us all learning together, and that's really cool.
Well, so exciting stuff. So I guess you're posting your whole week.
I leave Friday.
Same. Yes, same. So, well, I can't thank you enough for the collaboration. This has been so fun. We had this incredible space here.
It's been fantastic. We appreciate it.
Yeah, enjoy your rest of your evening.
We're at the Hearst House.
Beautiful.
We've got Jinx
With AC.
Longacre.
With AC.
Who is a real CMO, right? So we're going to talk a lot of shop about both. You've got a long background at Comcast, Sling TV, now recently Optimum.
Yeah, that's right.
Where you're the chief marketing officer. So I think we talk shop about being the trajectory to CMO and what that looks like and what you do and how it's transformed over time, but also just about the CTV and television ecosystem, which is rapidly changing before our eyes.
Exactly.
So welcome to the pod.
Well,
it's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me sit in the AC. I'll spend as much time as you want.
Yeah, exactly. And we have lots of water. We've realized. I was told today that coffee without hydration has the opposite effect. Yeah, the caffeine. I guess it starts to act like a Valium. I don't know. It'll put you to sleep.
It'll dehydrate you.
So he also runs. Jinx also runs a podcast called The Art of Commerce.
That's right.
Right. And Signal and Noise, The Art of Commerce, are potentially working together during ad week.
Yeah, there's something we're brewing.
Right. Yeah.
Talking about coffee.
Yeah.
There's something we're brewing.
Yeah. So we're going to have a super professional production studio where Brian Williams is doing his Netflix studio. And we talked with you and your partner who's in Texas.
Yeah. Oh, no, we're Colorado.
He's in Colorado, but he definitely wears a Texas cowboy hat.
He's just got the cowboy hat. He's making it a thing.
It's an authentic cowboy hat.
It looks
this is like, you do not, he treats this properly. It's kind of like the Yellowstone where you always put your cowboy hat like down on a bed.
Yeah.
Never, wait.
There's you treat it properly.
Yeah, you have to treat it like a Ferrari, right? It is a part of your identity. So tell us. So recent Optimum news. I mean, that's really congratulations.
It's awesome. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Thank you very much.
And to kind of go through that trajectory. So tell us a little bit about like your life as a marketing executive especially in the space that you've played in, because you've become an expert in the telecommunications and in MVPD space, right?
Yeah. And so I've always said kind of a non-traditional path to CMO. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't come up through CPG, all that. I wasn't a brand manager.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? But or now I guess I didn't work at one of the big tech companies. But unless kind of MBA internship. But anyway, my path was really all about digital, right? So when I started in kind of the mid 2000s or whatever it was, like digital was emerging. Like I don't think Google even sold an ad yet.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Rio's not with us right now, but Rio and I mean, started before. I mean, email marketing was the thing.
Yeah.
At that time, and they were just DoubleClick was just introducing banner ads.
That's right.
The first banner ads.
And so it was like that time where you could actually I'm not going to curse on this pod, but like mess around and find out, right? Like,
you can curse on this pod.
Yeah, okay, awesome. I can fuck around and find out.
Yeah. You're the CMO, right? I don't know if you've got a comms person.
No, I don't want you to get the explicit rating on Apple, But anyway,
I think we already have the explicit rating on YouTube. Yeah, I really do.
But anyway, you could learn, right? Without the CEO kind of asking you a ton of questions, because you're learning. Like now, ChatGPT, you have no option. Like you're literally at a board meeting and they're like, on ChatGPT, like, hey, look what I found. Like, so it's a different model today. But what I was able to do is really understand the digital space very, very well. And then we're going to start an environment where I wore multiple hats, which is just
and this was pre-Comcast.
This was pre-Comcast. This was pre-MBA. This was like right out of school.
Just like Rio and I. Early days. Working out of an apartment. A startup.
Exactly.
Right? And doing direct response marketing.
100%. Like we had our budget for marketing. We didn't have one. Like, you know what I mean? So you basically went to the CEO. You're like, I think I can make this much money back, and then you would argue for a while. Maybe he keeps. But it was a great learning experience. So that after I did my MBA, I went to JP Morgan Chase. So again, it was pre-Comcast. And what I learned at JP Morgan Chase was like, again, non-traditional. I did product. Like I did product management. Yeah. And the reason but I sat in marketing, and the reason for that was they really didn't have a digital product team. Like now they have a really robust JP Morgan Chase. Very.
Where you're supporting a specific, like a Sapphire credit card or whatever,
right,
and you've got the team that's got a budget around customer acquisition.
Well, so we were doing I ran an innovation team for Ultimate Rewards, which is a loyalty platform. And what was really cool is like we did things like Amazon Pay with Points, right, where we needed to figure out how to. Our remit was really two things. Yes, we were going to create product, but it was to be marketable, so we could acquire customers, and then a retention, because loyalty or retention benefits. So that's where Amazon Pay with Points came. I did a lot of work with the Freedom Card, which was it's still around, but it was a big card at the time, around pay with points at the point of sale, because the brief was like, what's better than getting something you love for free?
Yeah. Right? It's less building the product and more sort of like positioning in
No, it was actually kind of soup to nuts.
Okay.
So my team were product managers, marketers, and so to that point, like I wasn't hands on keyboards with the dev, but it's like a typical product management role you might see.
Yeah.
But it sat at this awesome intersection of product, technology, and marketing, right?
Yep.
And from that I went to Comcast, and that's where like they basically recruited me to do digigital advertising. I'm like, I've never done this. Like, what are you even talking? Like, I mean, I've done like early stage, and I'm a product guy. I'm cool. I'm super cool.
Yeah.
But they were like, no, why you do digital advertising? You have the background, but you also understand customer return.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like I do. And so we could do that. And so really,
which I call like domain expertise. Knowing how a CMO and their teams, before you were a CMO, right? Understand the work streams, the flows, and then the value generation for consumers.
Yes. And
right.
Yeah. And I'll put a pin in that, because you're saying something exactly right that I'm going to come back to. That's more of like advice for everybody. But so you're right. That domain expertise got me to this like advertising space where I just dug into new media. So my remit was, again,
back when they called it new media.
Yeah, right. Well, by the way,
not new anymore.
By the way, it was 2016, and I was like, I was running emerging digital, which was YouTube and Facebook, right? And so like it was basically, we did a lot of TV ads, and I was like, let's not run those on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Totally. Or like, like you can skip after 5 seconds. We probably should do something.
The form factor doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, which is hilarious now. We're saying the same thing, but now it's TikTok, or now it's whatever, right? So it's old as new again. But anyway, so from that I went and go to customer journey. Well, everything I did drove to digital. So then I naturally was like, I got an opportunity to run e-commerce. So first it was acquisition, then it was acquisition and base, then it was mobile. So by the time COVID came around, I'm running the whole nut.
Yeah.
And then COVID came, and the way we sold telco, the way we sold cable Comcast, internet at Comcast, the trajectory of digital, we were kind of below the radar. All of a sudden, we were the biggest sales.
Yeah.
And so that kind of,
and it was driven by a change in consumer behavior. People like not only hybrid work, but people were just online. It drove a lot of
absolutely
digital sort of transformation with consumers and how we can,
Well, I will tell you, because this was, remember back to
Yeah,
2020, and somebody like, oh, there's something going on, some kind of thing, but it's not a big deal, whatever. February 2020, I remember seeing our sales spike, and I'm calling my marketing partners. I'm like, did we do something? I'm like, we didn't run a promo. Did we put more into paid search? No. Did we do that? No. And I was like, oh my gosh, this thing, what's COVID, might be a real thing, because I've never seen this kind of spike organically.
Yeah.
And so back to the point, the data tells you the truth. And
and just for clarity, we're at Comcast.
I'm running
right? Just so people know where we are in the story. We went from JP Morgan. Now we're at Comcast.
We're at Comcast.
Right? There's a surge in acquisition, which was kind of organic.
It was
driven
by COVID.
Driven by COVID, right? People have a lot of time to spend at home.
Yeah, and right, and we had done so much work over. So I started in e-com in 2017, and the work prior to me, and then the work from 2017 to 20, we were ready to handle the volume. Like, that's the biggest takeaway. I tell people, I'm like, yes, you can never predict COVID or whatever, but you have to build the foundation, because think about if we didn't have the infrastructure to take that volume or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
you'd have a huge churn problem, and that could affect your brand.
Churn, fallout, conversion. Exactly. So anyway, fast forward. It's 2021, and I was having a great run at Comcast, but I wanted to do more. Right? Again, back to this is where I'm going back to domain expertise. I had the great fortune of working in product, working in digital advertising, working in media, working in e-commerce, running a sales channel, owning a P&L. I'm like, I want to now own the full thing. I've had all these little pieces.
Yeah.
I want the whole nut. And so that's when Sling TV, I was looking for a head of marketing, and I talked to the president at the time, and we hit it off. And so I said, look, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take a bet on myself. I'm going to move. That's when I moved the family to Denver. That's how I met Rio.
He's
a couple years later.
Denver, Rio's in Denver. And you moved from what really precipitated you going? Was it just expanding your domain expertise to go from Comcast to Sling?
Yeah, it was really I wanted to run a whole marketing organization.
Yeah,
that was a goal of mine.
Yeah,
I didn't care about title, CMO, whatever. I just wanted to run the whole full stack.
Yeah.
And I had, like I said, domain expertise in all these
different areas.
But I wanted to run the real.
Yeah.
And so they gave me the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so
there's an advantage to being being like a jack of all trades, master of none, because you can hire the specialists in the various categories, right?
Well, and I talked about, we actually plug again. We have a pod called The Art of Commerce, and since I started at Optimum, we did kind of like a first 90 days, my advice kind of deal. And I say this, I am what you would call a T, inch wide or whatever, inch deep, mile wide, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. And so
I thought you were giving me like a Myers Briggs or like a disc.
I don't know.
I'm a D on the.
I'm probably a D on that too. Right? I'm top center or whatever. But you can tell. But no. So I call it a T. So you have eyes, which are very functional, inch wide, mile deep, and you have T's, which are mile wide, inch deep, and why that helps as a CMO, back to your point about domain expertise, I can talk to my e-commerce team knowledgeably. I can talk to my creative team knowledgeably. I can talk to my media team knowledgeably, right? And I don't know as much as them, but having the broader purview allows you to connect the dots for them.
Yes.
Knowing,
and it's that orchestration and conducting layer, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to be, you could be the lead violinist in an orchestra, but you could also be the conductor that's ensuring that all of these pieces and the talent is aligned in the right way, are fitting together to sing, to really bring that thing to life.
Exactly right.
And that's what you're doing from a marketing
100%.
Right?
That's literally what you're doing. And like I said on our pod, it's also about building trust. If you're leading a team, you're
and they've got to trust you know what you're talking about. Exactly. Otherwise, they're not going to listen to you. You have to build credibility.
Exactly.
Right?
And so that does. I can't tell you whether it was at Sling or now Optimum. If I talk to a team, the e-commerce team, and I'm like, yeah, I did your job. And here's what we used to do. Oh my God, you know what we're talking about? I've never had a senior leader know what I've been talking about.
How did you avoid this sort of, we'll call it the micromanagement doom loop of feeling that, and I don't think you're this type, but you can fall into the trap of what, from a leadership perspective,
of course,
of because you've got this mile wide, inch deep,
Yeah, yeah.
acting like you know everything better than the people that work for you on all of these different topics. And then it makes you rigid and unwilling to change, or at least to give up the reins. That's a founder problem. Founders oftentimes, they're like, I've done all this stuff.
And I'm smarter than you.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like which I've seen before.
And so then they don't want to give up the reins.
Exactly. No.
Right?
And
So how did you manage that process?
It's such a great question, Brett. And so for me, it's really like, so let me say this. You have to tell your team you're giving them ideas, but you believe that they are more knowledgeable about you in that area.
Yeah.
You have to say it, but then you have to believe it. Okay? And I do. Like, so for
I'm always like, start with an A. Like, you start with an A, and then we'll see how things work out, right? And if your grade point average starts to decrease over time, as opposed to starting with somebody that, like, you should never be hiring a C student.
No, exactly.
Right? Because you'll know during the process, the talent acquisition
You'll know
process.
whether they're, you know, full
like,
of it.
I know you've got the potential. Now you got to sort of live up to the potential.
Exactly. Right. Set the bar high. Right. And then the other thing I do is the tactic, I say, look, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Like, I don't, because again, like, my background is,
I'm not going to prescribe how.
Exactly, because I dealt with technology people a lot. And the worst thing you could do to an engineer is say, hey, here's the solution. They'll hate you. You will not be a good partner.
Even if you're a full stack developer or whatever.
And it's actually with a creative. Like, if you go to a creative and like, hey, I want merchandising. Like, no. So with creative, with engineer, you have to state a problem, right? You know, you'd be like, here's the problem we're trying to solve, right? And then they'll help you. And so that similarly, I go to the team, I say, there's a problem we're going to try to solve. And I say, look, and by the way, this is my also thing. I hate big reveals. Like, even agencies like, oh, this is a big person. Please don't, because we work together. We need it to be great. So I say, look, take the problem or get to your solution, bake it halfway.
Yeah. Iteratively work. It's an agile workflow.
Exactly.
Right?
Bring it back and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And then that's how we iterate.
Yeah.
And that's how.
And I want to, and like, I'm happy to review the drafts.
Exactly.
But if you go this waterfall method of rolling out something, and then you come to me and you're like, well, you should have talked to me like 6 steps ago.
Yeah.
Because you went the completely wrong direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Like, no, and that's, I do that with my boss too.
And that's not micromanagement. That's just helping.
Yes.
And being open for guidance, and you know, because people do hit roadblocks. It could be internal organizational roadblocks. Like, I can't get this done because I've got a blocker over here.
Exactly.
Right. Or it could just be knowledge. They hit the limits of their knowledge in a particular area, and shouldn't be afraid to ask.
That's right. That's right.
It's like our wives complain that why don't you ever ask for directions?
Exactly.
Right? Like men, I mean, what's wrong with us? You know?
We have Google Maps. Like,
now it's all Waze. So
exactly.
it's like, like, I really know what I'm doing. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't know where you're going.
But I printed these MapQuest directions.
So back to, so we talked about like sort of leadership and you wanting to head marketing and run the function. You did that at Sling TV. So what did you learn? What did you learn about the industry, right? In the television industry specifically. And, you know, you're going into fast and streaming, CTV related content, right? What did you see? And is Sling is full subscription, or are they also fast?
Oh, so so great question. So I learned a ton.
Yeah.
Because think about it. Comcast is a TV company tradition, but we're internet and mobile.
Yeah.
But
that's why I sort of said telecommunications. It's connectivity.
You're right. But Sling was, and then Dish, when I took over that marketing as well, like, that is a television product. And Sling is really interesting to your point, because it's streaming, it's over the top, monthly subscription. So there's a lot you have to combat, churn, et cetera. But we were like tip of the spear. So, like, I mean, most people know the way they know about Sling is the Roku button, right?
Yeah.
We were early Roku button, pre my time. But like, so we were kind of tip of the spear on these.
There's a
devices.
Sling
button on the
Roku device. Talk about building yourself into the hardware.
Exactly.
Right.
And so we had pivoted from button and hardware because, you know, arguable on how much that works, but we spend a lot of time on the display media. On connected television. So like that just means when you launch your Roku, you know, there's a masthead, there's a thing you can buy, and it's advertising. But you can also buy the placement of where your tile is, like tons of stuff. And so I just learned a ton about not only the video connected TV element, which is the way most people think about it, but also now there's display elements, which now other we'll call non-endemic. Endemic would be streaming, you know, endemic of the platform.
Yeah.
Non-endemic brands would be like Procter & Gamble.
Yeah.
Right. They don't have a streaming product, but they want to advertise because they want that awareness. So now you start to see more and more brands get into that space. And I learned through Sling a ton about measurement and what to look for and how you work these different placements which is fantastically valuable. Then to answer your question, the thing we did around, because the Sling has a lot of churn, which is any streaming product is no news. So
people are calling their subscription overload.
Exactly.
Right.
And,
you don't even realize you're subscribed to certain things.
Exactly.
At times,
and we have two things. One, they come in for the NBA finals and they leave. But then you have two things where we have this button that's just still around on many, many remotes. People click it, maybe accidentally, then they go to a page that says sign up, and they're like, I don't want to sign up. So we said, look, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna launch a fast service. We got a free stream.
Oh, there we go. So you got to which is free advertising supported.
Free advertising supported television. And what that was, yes, it was an entryway for me to say free TV to kind of open my funnel from acquisition.
Yeah.
But it was really good for retention because when you disconnect, we said you're disconnected or you unsubscribed.
Yeah,
we have all this free.
You can still watch us.
Yeah,
you have to.
You can still watch us. Yeah. So
but you're just going to be exposed to ads.
Yeah. So we learned a lot. Anyway, moral of the story: we learned a ton about not only the advertising on the platform to acquire, like I said, we also learned how to create really great products and experiences to monetize, to your point, and retain our customers.
Yeah, so there's inter-platform advertising, right? In terms of, hey, instead of churn, we're going to convert you into another model.
Yeah.
Right, which says you can still watch this TV, whether or not they do. What percentage of people that were converted over to fast, right? Let's say they either churned or started in fast. Do you see like a dip in engagement rates or time spent within Sling, like within a fast model, or is it, or do you see any change in consumer consumption behavior?
You do. I mean, there are definitely it's all about the content. So if the content's not resonating, you'll see that dip. But we did something interesting where we were
but the ads themselves, you don't think are driving any of that?
No, I think people are
kind of accustomed.
to it.
It's part of you watch sports. It's part of linear television.
Right. It's part of linear television. It's part of the experience anyway. So the real thing was having the ad quality, right? In the beginning, we put 5 of the same ad back to back.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and that was kind of that was a problem, and it was sort of symptomatic of a fragmented CTV ecosystem.
That's right.
Where it was hard to do kind of unified buys that weren't direct to publisher, right?
Yeah.
And then you see examples when you're watching streaming where even today, where you're like, have they not been able to fill this ad spot?
And the
or the repeated ad again and again and again and again.
Or the worst is, we try to be smart. We try to be addressable using data things to target. But I'll be watching something get a Spanish language ad. I'm like, I don't know what signal you got from me.
They got the wrong profile.
That's what I'm saying. So you got to be very careful. You think you're being smart, but if you're using the wrong data set or the wrong signal, it's going to be noise, right? So So you got to watch out for that. So, but we learned a lot about connected TV, and then that's now what I brought to Optimum. So it's again because we're really thinking about how we use the different platforms that traditionally maybe telco wouldn't use.
Yeah.
To really be addressable to our footprint because we're like most telcos, we are in a footprint, and I don't want to waste media dollars. So I want to be really targeted to the household, really addressable to the audience, and then creative that drives them to consider us. Right?
Yeah, and considering the gap between Comcast and Optimum, what has changed? What are the biggest changes at the top 3, let's say, in the industry that you think have changed how you think about customer acquisition, customer lifetime value, loyalty, all that stuff?
Well, yeah. So one from Comcast to Optimum, Comcast has a much bigger footprint, right? So Comcast can this is mass media, right? You can put money in mass media and the CPMs are so low, cost per, impression is so low that I'm okay with the waste.
Yeah.
Because in aggregate, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
My cost per acquisition will still be good. On the Optimum side, say from the New York area which we're really big. So listeners in New York probably are hopefully our customers or at least are aware of us. Outside of New York, we got to be really surgical.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference, right? I'm moving to much more addressable media, all that stuff. 2 is, back in the day, internet, cable, whatever, people are there are jokes, people used to run after the Comcast. Hook me up.
Yeah.
So much competition now. You really have to understand your customer, and you really have to enable a MarTech stack to communicate with them. It's not okay to not talk to them. We used to almost say don't communicate with them because they might cancel. Right?
And I think from my past experience with some of the telcos of that type, the communication was sort of non-existent until they were trying to upsell you into another package.
Yeah.
So talk to me about bundling, right? So you're at Sling, bundling and unbundling and in a la carte, being able to select the types of packages. I do that with Verizon Fios. Sorry to mention the competition, but they don't have a huge footprint. So I stuck with linear TV specifically because, or cable TV, because I wanted access to sports, right? And I didn't want to be limited to certain games in the playoffs,
of course,
right?
Of course.
And so that's really so I was able to, for the first time in my entire sort of television viewing life, I was able to actually create a bundle that was largely oriented around sports, and then everything else I watch is streaming. Right. It's subscription models to Netflix and the like in Prime. So how have you guys thought? And that's shifted a lot. Right?
So it's funny because it's like we go in these cycles, right? Yeah, everyone had everyone had a big unitasker app. It was too bloated, 1 million apps, and then now we're back to unitasker. Right? Because now we had the bandwidth. So anyway, bundling was a big deal. Triple play, all that stuff. I came to Sling. Cutting the cord, unbundling was big. What people realize, though, is to your point, they're not going to get all the content unbundled, and it may be more expensive. So when I was at Sling, we did a lot of partnerships. Like, say we didn't carry Paramount, CBS, so we try to partner with Paramount, or at least talk about that value proposition of, hey, get a couple things, get a discount, and you'll get it. With the new model of telco, we're really thinking about, well, yes, how do we bundle in streaming services to our product? And we do, like our TV packages have up to $1,400 in value of streaming services. It's crazy because we get the Gotham app and all this kind of stuff. But we also think about mobile. So like mobile for us, with internet, it's just such a great customer value proposition, not just from price, but also quality of service, and allows you to have more than one customer relationship, allows for a stickier customer, better business, better customer.
More time spent because they can watch easily. And that's also been I think a frustration point when I've dealt with the cable providers is the you forget your password, right? Everybody forgets their password.
Everybody forgets their password.
And then I'm trying to log into a different device, different IP, and then the login process is difficult, or I'm trying to get access to, like, let's say ESPN or ESPN Plus, and I have to log in through my provider.
Which one is it?
And suddenly you're like the friction. Do you guys think about that a lot? In terms of how do you eliminate some of the
if you go to those apps you're talking about, we are right there. We can just log in near the Optimum ID. We have link outs from our video app kind of thing. So we think about that a lot.
It's almost like a single sign-on experience where it's a bit more seamless. And I've seen it get improved, but this is all fairly recent. So what's next? I mean, as we enter our next conversation, we've talked for a few minutes here. Is what's next for Optimum? Like, what are your big plans? What does your team look like?
So under me, which wasn't the case before, we've combined now e-commerce and what we call traditional marketing, right? Because that's where I believe that's what you need as a CMO. You need to not only own the spend, but you need to own the conversion, which is what we do. And so it's now we brought those teams together. We're adding a leader of MarTech as well to the team. So really changing the way our marketing organization thinks about digital, focuses on digital, and thinks about the end to end. Like that is and automation. And
and the leader of MarTech would do what exactly?
So essentially gain the most value out of our stack, evaluate new things we want.
And this is everything from, this is B2C, but
B2C,
but are we talking also your stack in terms of everything from DSP relationships to CRM, to marketing automation,
campaign automation, AI orchestration, because again, like,
and is this would you consider this person a marketing engineer? I mean, are they technical than more so than
they
generalists?
live in this beautiful world of understanding marketing, understanding data, understanding technology. So I kind of view them, even like, they interviewed with the engineering leads as well. Like, they're almost like a product manager in a way, like back to my old school roots. Like, they're a product manager in a way to say, hey, look, here's the tech. This is the value we want out of it. But they go a step further because they also understand the architecture.
Right. And that's critical. That's that sort of new role, right? Which is the technical marketer, the marketing engineer, right? And I think it's it's the death of specialization. That's kind of a trend we're seeing in the industry, not just marketing, but where you're having people that are fundamentally cross-functional.
That's right.
Right. And they have kind of multiple hyphens. So I'm a marketer, I'm an engineer, I'm a this, the other thing, right? It seems, are you seeing that as a trend within marketing organizations, especially considering AI's capability to add and compound
Well,
what we do?
I think, I was just talking about this yesterday on a different pod, but the fact that like we're like, everyone's like, what are the skills you need to be a marketer in AI? I'm like, the same skills you needed when we were right out of college and like just trying to figure it out. You need to be curious. You need to try to understand the end to end. You need to understand customer journeys. You need to figure out what the best way to get to a customer is. You need to think creatively. Like, all that stuff. And then now the layer you also need is, how do I make AI make me better at that?
It's sort of like, if I had to put three legs to this stool, it's sort of functional expertise, understanding the functions at least enough to be dangerous. Because every function, whether you're a product leader or a CMO, has multiple kind of sub functions underneath it, right? Then there's the domain expertise, which is, who are you selling to? Right. And do you understand their journey? If you're B2B and you're selling to a CMO, we better understand your work streams and your daily life, right? Same thing with a consumer. Right. And then the third, I think, would be technical expertise, meaning you don't need to be a full stack developer, but you do need to be curious enough and intellectual enough.
And speak the language.
Yeah, speak the language and know how to apply this to your own day-to-day world, because it's a democratizing factor on how fast we can work. Speed is a very important component here, right? And how much decision, it's kind of like compounding your decisioning capabilities. And if you're not leveraging it,
you got
to make your decisions faster and leveraging a far larger sort of underlying data set, then you're kind of missing out. You're stuck in your own brain.
That's right.
And maybe some colleagues, and you're missing out. Right?
Awesome. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. You got it. I mean, it's like he has a podcast. Like, it's like he's done this before.
And so for those, speaking of podcasts, so we'll leave it at that. But check out Art of Commerce.
The Art of Commerce, please. We like this.
We are in a world where we're supporting one another.
Exactly.
We're going to be co-podcasting. We're going to be co-promoting. I think it's great because it's a bigger pot. We're creating a bigger pot.
All boats are going to rise with the tide.
Yeah, exactly. and we have slightly different focus areas, but this has been great, Jinx. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And it was great meeting you the other day in New York City.
And hit it off right away.
Yeah, I felt we were both laughing our ass off at dinner time, and I thought, wow, we're really going to get to know one another, aren't we? And so it's gone. You can tell by the nature of this conversation. But hey, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining this episode at Cannes Lion, and we will talk soon.